acting like that. Turn on the radio, turn on the stereo. Please tell me what have you found? A panda or your tears round? Don't worry, anything's going on. Finally you decide to go in this romantic crazy show. Turn on the radio, turn on the stereo. Pay attention everyone, I am your moon and your sun. Oh, up and down, come on, let's get your broken heart found. Please turn around, won't let you down. Never ever leave you alone. Life goes on, I really wanna dream on. There's no one could hold your love, always time beyond. Leap from the ground into the dark. Turn off the clowning sun.
You're listening to Stardust FM 999, your celestial haven for all things across the galaxy. Hold on, Stellar Souls. Stay tuned for a detailed coverage of the Galactic Break coming up shortly.
If one day we turn zebras or you see dogs ride pumas, would you please come back, see me, pick one red rosa? Oh baby, love you so much, can't send your little heart loud. Turn on the radio, turn on the stereo. Pay attention everyone, I am your moon and your sun. Oh, up and down, come on, let's get your broken heart found. Please turn around, won't let you down. Never ever leave you alone. Life goes on, I really wanna dream on. There's no one could hold your love, always time beyond. Leap from the ground into the dark. Turn off the clowning sun.
Attention, Stellar Souls. The Galactic Break is in full throttle. Breaking news. Rookie sensation Argenti holds third, with experienced racer Luca at second. Leading the pack is the stellar Welt Asta. Keep tuned to Stardust FM 999 for your celestial journey. Here we go.
You're the best comedic guy, acting your right. Turn on, just turn that on. Your microphone, love and think, just play and dance. No one could be your moon or your sun, but except me. Come on, your frozen heart ice will get on. Please turn around, don't let me down. Turn into nighttime sun. Hold on, baby, turn off your light. Follow the groove in your mind. Oh, sweetie, we will meet until you say goodbye. No matter if you are a cat or something acting like that. Turn on the radio, turn on the stereo. Please tell me what have you found? A panda or your tears round? Don't worry, anything's going on. Finally you decide to go in this romantic crazy show. Turn on the radio, turn on the stereo. Pay attention everyone, I am your moon and your sun. Oh, up and down, come on, let's get your broken heart found. Please turn around, won't let you down. Never ever leave you alone. Life goes on, I really wanna dream on. There's no one could hold your love, always time beyond. Leap from the ground into the dark. Turn off the clowning sun.
You're listening to Stardust FM 999, your celestial haven for all things across the galaxy. Hold on, Stellar Souls. Stay tuned for a detailed coverage of the Galactic Break coming up shortly.
If one day we turn zebras or you see dogs ride pumas, would you please come back, see me, pick one red rosa? Oh baby, love you so much, can't send your little heart loud. Turn on the radio, turn on the stereo. Pay attention everyone, I am your moon and your sun.
full throttle. Breaking news! Rookie sensation Argenti holds third, with experienced racer Luca at second. Leading the pack is the stellar Welt Asta. Keep tuned to Stardust FM 999 for your celestial journey. Here we go!
You're the best comedic guy, acting your right. Turn on, just turn that on. Your microphone, love and feet, just play on. Dance, no one could be your moon or your sun, but except me. Come on, your frozen heart, I will get on. Please turn around, don't let me down. Turn into nighttime sun. Hold on, baby, turn off your light. Follow the groove in your mind. Oh, sweet.
Hello everyone, welcome to my stream. Okay, please turn off stream is alive for that emergency. Alien, I need to go to poo poo. I just going to poo poo, nothing serious. Guys ready? You guys ready? Tell me if there's some. Tell me right away if there's something wrong with my audios or my screen. If it's happened to have hiccups or something wrong, please tell me right away. Thank you, you guys. Okay, let me open my screen. Oh, I cannot see my screen. I cannot see my screen. What happened? Just let me display that then. Okay. Okay, you guys, I can see my screen right now. Let's go to this page. Hey, you guys ready? Oh yes, this is the Storyteller photo series from ShoddyCast. By the way, Rip, you've been a legend. I don't know you, but you've been a legend. Rip, my friend. Rip. Okay, today we will react to the Storyteller photo series of ShoddyCast. A lot of you guys been recommend this for me. So today we're gonna watch this and learn more about the photo universe. I really don't know how many episodes will I react, so let's see. Oh shit, there is 76 episodes. Not bad. Okay, we will react to all of this, but how many streams it requires, I don't know. We will see. Watching this Storyteller almost make Walker, stop! You almost make me say it again. You mother. God damn it. Read the Storyteller, though he was a legend. Okay, we're going in. You guys ready? Then let me drink my water first. Okay, let's go in. The Storyteller photos by ShoddyCast.
After it was a sure thing that America could wipe out a city with just one bomb, a scientist turned to Father and said, "Science has now known sin." And do you know what Father said? He said,
Where my subtitle?
"What is sin?"
What is sense?
The discovery of the atomic bomb in the 1940s has given humanity a question the Fallout series has strived to answer. If ever there would come a day
Bring
when
your
mankind
snack,
possessed
people.
the capacity to destroy
We're
himself,
going for a ride.
what would come of us?
I will eat my
Some predict
snack.
that this is where our story will end. Yet what if it was only another bloody chapter of human history? You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get
You
to the
never
heart
get
of the
rid
story,
of me.
you have to go back to the beginning.
Goddamn Walker. The bombs! Lore series. Stand by. ShoddyCast. The Legend. The Great War.
Change comes to all nations. In the early 20th century, the great powers of the old world thought that their rule would never end. The Tsars of Russia met their downfall at the hands of a bloody revolution. Western Europe fought a great war against fascists. who
Is
sought to
audio
build a
okay,
life that
everyone?
would last 1,000 years. It
Tell
crumbled
me.
in less than a decade.
Tell me,
The
people.
Japanese believed their
Is
empowering
audio
rule
okay?
was eternal, yet they were the first to have their pride seared away by atomic fire. The United States of America emerged as the world's great power by the 1950s. Vast nuclear arsenals ensured that open warfare was a thing of the past, and soon after, America entered a Cold War with their enemies. It was a long, uneasy peace, a perpetual status quo as though the world were freeze-dried
It's
and
good.
sealed in a vault
Good.
for a century. Those wandering the wasteland
Okay.
today might find it hard to believe that only 200 years ago, the richest nation in the world existed here. No death claws, no super mutants, no ghouls. Most folk
Wait.
back
Isn't the Death Claw appear before the bomb drops? We saw that in the TV shows. This is outdated. We see in the TV show that Death Claw appears before the bombs dropped. We saw Coop Howard fight with it. Yeah. We still don't know what made them. I think it was the Enclave.
then didn't have to fight for survival or scavenge supplies. Factories produced everything a person could want by the millions. Walking into a store with a stack of paper money, they could
Holy
buy as
shit.
much food, ammo,
There's
or
a
clothing
goddamn
as they could
child
carry.
holding
In
a
fact,
fat
the
man.
biggest problem people faced was finding a place to keep it all.
That clothes was made before the bombs dropped because they was being made before the war to be used as a super weapon. I don't know. I don't remember who made them. Is the Enclave? I think it was the Enclave. It's not the Chinese. Because the Deathclaw attacked the Chinese. It attacked everyone. It was before the TV show, the Storyteller passed. Yeah, I know that, but
Highways stretched 3,000 miles from coast to coast, with roadside diners selling fresh burgers made from something the old world called a cow.
yummy.
Riding in gas-guzzling Chrysler cars and drinking ice-cold soda pop. The American
We need a car that we can drive in a new Fallout. We need that. I don't want to work anymore. I need a car in the new Fallout games. Fuck the Enclave.
Americans enjoyed their prosperity for generations, secure in their belief that their way of life would never alter, that they would never be forced to evolve. Change came slowly at first, and it was welcomed. People weren't satisfied just having a house where fresh water came right out of a pipe in the wall. No, they wanted more. Always more. They wanted robots to do their work for them, and they needed electronic computers to do their thinking for them. Companies like Robco filled the demand for domestic robots so that citizens didn't have to lift a finger. A robotic Mr. Handy could walk the dog, do the laundry,
best
and watch
nanny.
over the kids too, leaving mom and dad free to spend an evening on the town, or to watch the latest show on the old Radiation King television set. Of course, all these newfangled technological wonders needed power to run.
That clothes was made by the pre-war American government, but later experimentation and refinement done by the Master and the Enclave. Is this in the Fallout 3 lore? Fallout 3 lore? Because I never heard of this. Or maybe I missed some details when I'm watching the TV shows. Maybe that.
Gasoline had been plentiful for over 100 years, but the Earth had started to run dry by the middle of the 21st century. More and more of the power came from atomic energy, and thanks to companies like General Atomics, there were atoms to spare for decades to come. Cities lit up, robots kept on humming, and computer monitors kept glowing.
In all
Some
ours?
factories even started turning out atomic-powered cars with fuel cells that still have some juice in them today. So don't go using those rusted old Corvegas for target practice. Factories churned out toys for the kids, teddy bears, tricycles, and comic books by the ton. Dad could mix his rum with a bottle of Nuka-Cola.
Yummy.
And Mom had new spring fashions every year. Shelves were filled with snack cakes, canned meats, and sugar-coated cereals. All of it pumped full of preservatives so that it would stay fresh forever, and Mom wouldn't have to take so many trips to the grocery store. When it came to consumption, the Americans were the best. Yet, even with the increased use of atomics, there wasn't enough energy for the billions of people across the world. Oil was more precious than ever, and the petroleum-rich countries of the Middle East sold their
we
dwindling
know,
supplies at ever higher
The main
prices.
reason
Eventually, the wells
goes
ran
to the
dry
war
in most
is
of the
because
world.
of the oil.
Uranium mines were scraped clean, but no one wanted to give up their shiny new technology. Change had come, and with it, war. The
War
Middle
never
East could have used
changes.
their limited
Had
uranium
to say
stock
that.
to power reactors
I
for a
have
few
to say that.
decades, but instead, they squandered it on weapons to settle old scores. The European Commonwealth had been proud of how they had joined together in one glorious unified state, but it didn't take long before they turned on each other, scrambling for the last drops of oil within their borders. Alaska, with its abundance of natural resources, remained the source of America's power, and the only place on Earth where oil still flowed. The far-off territory was a tempting target for a desperate China. The Americans foresaw invasion and fortified Alaska, but nothing could deter China from capturing Anchorage. With the two remaining superpowers at war, Canada was trapped in the middle and soon annexed by their neighbors to the south. Allegedly, this was so that the entire continent could be one continuous nation allied against the Chinese invaders. But Canadians viewed it as a ruthless bid for America to retain control of the world's remaining oil supply. The resource wars had come to American soil. In a resource war, the winner will always be the side that fights most efficiently.
I love eating 200 years old pre-war clams and blanco mac and cheese.
China
Sounds
used the greatest
yummy.
minds of the East to create stealth technology that allowed their recon teams to infiltrate and assassinate.
Is stealth suit part of this? Is the stealth suit in for New Vegas part of this? Did the big mountain and have any relate to the Chinese? Because a lot of time, a lot of video I watch, the invincible suit, playing with the Chinese. It was sent by Chinese. Oh, that's why.
While remaining completely undetected, taking down high-value targets with a single shot. America had its own
I gotta
brand
say
of
that
eccentric
shit
genius.
is so
Power of
badass.
the atom at hand, unbridled American engineers created scientific marvels the rest
Yes,
of the world
this
couldn't
too.
have imagined.
This
The
motherfucker
glut of
too.
consumer electronics that had flooded American stores were only the beginning of the wonders created by the likes of Robco and Poseidon Energy, whose true focus was the development of new weapons that could replace the inefficient tools of warfare used in past decades. Combat robots, energy weapons, and cybernetics entered the war as America sought to retake Anchorage. Battles were fought by daring men who fire nuclear warheads from shoulder-mounted crossbows. Cyber dogs with the brain of a loyal hound encased in an unyielding titanium body. Even robot butlers hovered across battlefields, armed with plasma guns and flamethrowers.
Capture the stealth suit, and the big mountain captured the stealth suit and tried to make American-made ones. That's how the Storyboy came into the world. Oh, so that's how they link together. Interesting. Nice to know that.
There was even a plan to engineer a new breed of mutant super soldiers, but it was the creation of power armor that ensured American victory. Power armor combined the mobility of an infantry soldier with the resilience of a tank and the firepower of an entire squad. Fueled by microfusion cells, these elite troops could inflict crippling strikes on Chinese military assets using a fraction of the resources of conventional military units. Early models of power armor were devastating enough, but after a decade of refinement, the T-51B power armor represented the height of pre-war combat technology. With the aid of these perfected armored suits, America quickly liberated their territory from the Chinese. In the modern day, the T-51B has become a symbol of the Brotherhood of Steel, but centuries ago, it was the final majestic icon of American exceptionalism.
Liberty Prime, the most massive and patriotic robot around. That's just so fire.
By autumn of 2077,
the first time I see that shit in the photo 4, I was like, whoa, shit. I want that. I want to ride that. Can I ride that?
in the Pacific were finished, and most Americans were so tired after a decade of war that they genuinely believed peace had arrived. The paranoid, or perhaps just perceptive, began stocking their bomb shelters, knowing that China would not simply slink away.
You should play Photo 3 before it's remastered, because playing the old one with the DLC is amazing. Oh, hello Axolot, welcome, Axolot Overlord, welcome to the stream. I will play Photo 3 after I finish my Witcher 1 first. Okay, I will play Photo 3. I decided because the Photo 3 remaster will take years to come, and I don't know I can wait that long. Maybe I will quit YouTube before that. Okay.
Across the ocean in defeat, a final confrontation was coming. In an effort to preserve at least part of humanity from the inevitable end that approached, a secret enclave of America's elite set about ensuring survival at all costs. Victory? Rebuilding? No longer viable options. Their full intent is lost to history, but documented plans include taking refuge within a mountain or an oil rig, and even launching a ship into space to find a new planet to colonize. The modern enclave claimed to be the descendants of that last group of America's elite. That might
Liberty Prime is even better in Photo 3. True fact, there was a mission in Photo 3 where the player could have controlled Liberty Prime against the Enclave, but it got scrapped. Boo! No, I want to ride that. Can I ride that? What a shame.
might be true, although many residents of the wasteland would argue that it takes more than a flag and a squadron of vertibirds to be a government of the people. Regardless of whether or not the Enclave's claims are true, the majority of America's population did not have access to offshore bases or secret mountaintop fortresses. Fortunately for 100,000 of them, the Vault Tech Corporation provided access to radiation-proof shelters that could each keep about 1,000 people safe while waiting for conditions on the surface to calm down. Nowhere near enough to save everyone, but it offered hope and kept the public from panicking. On October 23, 2077, alarms rang across the United States, signaling an attack. There had been plenty of false alarms and training drills over the years, and it isn't hard to imagine war-weary citizens shrugging their shoulders and going on with their day, unaware that this was really the apocalypse they had feared. Perhaps people laughed when they saw their neighbors racing to Vault-Tec facilities, the lucky and privileged few.
Spoilers? Oh yeah, that's kind of spoiler. Okay. I didn't even know it was a spoiler. I think I already know we will have a mission related to the Liberty Prime. I already know that, but the part that we have a mission to write it got scrapped. The part that part I didn't know, so it's okay.
Who had been assigned a place within one of the vaults might have felt silly when the massive doors rolled shut, but they were among the tiny fraction of humanity that could still feel anything at all when the bombs landed. Historians still don't know much about what happened outside the vaults that day. People weren't concerned with writing in their journals. Hard as it is to believe, there are still ways to hear first-hand accounts of the pre-war times. The sources aren't exactly reliable, though. A few rotten old ghouls claim to have been alive back then. Most of them are just telling tales, hoping to get someone to talk with them for a while.
Aww.
There are a few scientists who managed to preserve their brains in jars before the war, too. Some of those old brains are still alive today and might be able to discuss the old days.
Oh, not anymore.
Assuming that any of them are still sane after being a disembodied brain for 2 centuries. The right medical equipment has kept at least one person alive since before the war. Trouble is, a man with that kind of will to live isn't going to take chances by chatting with strangers.
It's not really a spoiler. Yeah.
Knowing how people lived before the war can help the wasteland tremendously. Scavengers and research teams dig up all sorts of things that can't be identified. Any rusty old box could hold an ancient secret to providing clean water, or fresh food, or limitless electricity to the wasteland. At the very least, the modern world could learn from the mistakes of the past. The Americans never truly believed that their way of life could come to such an abrupt end. But change comes to all nations, to all people, all ways of life. The only constant in man's struggle for survival is war. Because war
never changes. I love that part. Definitely didn't kill all of them by accident, but don't have enough speed and skill checks. Okay, we'll go to the next episode. Vaults and Vault-Tec.
The discovery of the atomic bomb in the 1940s has given humanity a question the Fallout series has strived to answer. If ever there would come a day when mankind possessed the capacity to destroy himself, what would come of us? Some predict that this is where our story will end. Yet what if it was only another bloody chapter of human history? You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get to the heart of the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
Dum, dum. The vault.
This presentation brought to you by Vault-Tec. Here's what you need to know about leaving the vault. Be sure to remember these basic rules.
Hello, Absolute Overlord.
Line up in
Again?
an orderly fashion.
You just said hi a few minutes ago. Okay, but
Rule
hello
number
again.
2, use protective eyewear. Years of living in the vault can make the eyes sensitive to natural sunlight. Without protective eyewear, extreme eye damage could result.
Oh,
Once outside the vault, be prepared to live life anew with help from the Garden of Eden Creation Kit.
The
or
GEC.
GEC. Use the GEC to create the new world you've been waiting for. Results may vary.
Damn
wait.
Rio.
On October
Oh my God.
23rd, 2077. The nightmares became
They
all
did.
too
They
real.
they
Great
didn't
were
even
commenced.
finish the
Blinding
disclaimer.
light ignited the sky, and people ducked and took cover as they had been taught, cowering under whatever they could, hoping that if they kept their eyes closed and remained still, that the merciless flames would pass them by. They hid beneath desks at school, under cars on the street, and behind desks at work. Perhaps a few were in their beds when the flash appeared on the horizon, and perhaps they drew their blankets over their head like children, hoping that the searing pain was just
Oh.
a bad dream. The ballyhooed tactic of duck and cover proved ineffective against armies that no longer cared about winning. Mutually self-assured destruction was the goal, and the American and Chinese exceeded it in spades. Hundreds of millions of people lost their lives within minutes, and billions more died over the days to come as radioactive fallout settled over entire continents. The fallout muddied the oceans, clouded the sky, and sunk deep into the soil. Those who happened to be in the right place at the moment the bombs fell managed to survive. These lucky few formed the primitive tribal societies that struggled for survival in the years immediately following the war. Hidden from those tribal bands were another group of survivors, those who had been selected for Project Safehouse.
Oh,
100,000 people fortunate enough to have been offered shelter inside impregnable survival shelters called vaults, created by the Vault Tech Corporation.
My chat isn't working right. I can see your chat. I can see your message. I think everything is fine.
The first vaults opened again a few years after the war, and their inhabitants slowly spread throughout the wasteland. By now, tales of the vaults have spread from coast to coast, although not many people alive today have actually been inside one. At the height of pre-war civilization, the government and a few powerful corporations knew that an apocalypse was brewing, so they used their finest technology to create vast subterranean bunkers that could withstand a nuclear blast, a meteor impact, global flooding, or other likely disasters. The general public wasn't entirely convinced that their end was nigh. Otherwise, there would have been a greater demand for vaults. When the war started, there were only about 100 of them scattered across America, and many held less than the 1,000 people they were intended to hold. Those who were smart enough or lucky enough to be inside one when the end came were protected from the devastation by airtight steel doors, thick walls of concrete, and over 200 feet of soil. The fine engineers at Vault Tech designed their bunkers to run independently for 10 years and even more. Geothermal power, hydroponic farms for growing food, and a water purification system so efficient Vault residents could fool themselves into thinking they weren't drinking their own urine. The designers made the vaults as homey as possible despite the steel-clad walls. The cafeterias were designed to look a little like roadside diners, and vault dwellers could close their eyes and imagine that they were eating a plate of Blamco mac and cheese. Shiny new medical robots tended to those who suffered from mundane illnesses and injuries, while on the surface world, billions died from radiation sickness, burns, starvation, and violence. Housing wasn't as spacious as on the surface, but there was plenty of room for several hundred people, and the vaults that held a few thousand or more could work out fair ways to share their bunks for a while. Each vault was run by a leader called the Overseer.
As they say in the Fallout show, cyanide pills, one of Vault Tech's kinda. Yeah, that shit was wild. The first time I see that, but oh shit. That shit is the last resort, and they will kindly use that. Oh my god, poor those people.
Who ran the underground community from a command center deep inside the complex. The overseers were usually selected for their exceptional leadership skills. The vaults were comfortable enough, but after 10 years the radiation had gone down in most parts of the country, and the vault dwellers expected to head back up into the sunlight and begin rebuilding their flawed societies. Vault Tech had prepared them for anything that might await on the surface. The vaults had all the research material that they would need to rebuild America, including the entire Library of Congress on holodisk, plus 101 recipes on how to cook rats.
Yummy!
Those who have walked the wasteland know that the world isn't a kind place. Sometimes people think of the pre-war days as a golden age, a time when people were better to each other. But there wouldn't have been an apocalypse if that were true.
Exactly. There's many vault tech, items, pills, vaults, a cardboard box, everything to make sure you're safe. Hello, the Lost Stranger. Welcome to the stream. Internet not working too great at moment, so not sure if you get this, but love the Storyteller from day one. Very sad when he passed too soon, but still great series. I still go back to this day. You can say he's left, even though he passed away too soon, but he has left his legacies to all of the photo fans. And shout out to that. Respect, guys.
No, people were cruel and callous to each other even back then, and the folks who ran Vault Tech were no exception. We've all heard of Vault City, a paradise built by the people who emerged from Vault 8 using a pre-war device called the Garden of Eden Creation Kit.
The Gek!
They represent what the world could have been like if only Project Safehouse had been on the up and up. Unfortunately, Vault Tech had some ulterior motives, and vaults like Vault 8 were rare. The poor fools who weathered the fallout in Vault Tech's nuclear shelters were the control groups in horrible experiments. Keep people nice and safe for 10 years, then open up and build a new Garden of Eden? That happened a few times out of 100 vaults. Most vaults were designed to deliberately malfunction as part of an experiment to see just how far the human mind could be pushed before it snapped.
So love your series shows up so survival Nora in the wasteland. So much fun while on slow days as well. Thank you, Lost Ranger. Thank you.
Unbeknownst to the Vault
you.
Dwellers, Vault Tech and some elite factions of the government had their own shelters far away from the public vaults. These elite wanted to learn how to rebuild society by observing the inhabitants of the defective vaults. Some of the vaults were designed so that their inhabitants would be trapped in isolation for generations. Think 10 years locked in a vault is a rough trip? Try 80 or 200. There could even be people still sealed inside hidden vaults that haven't opened yet. Other vaults had experiments that only a lunatic could conceive. 1,000 men with only one woman.
Isn't this vault a myth? Did this vault really exist in the lore? Hey, Lost Ranger, guess what? No, Walker! We not do that! We cannot do that to Ranger. Don't do that. Wait, it wasn't the 100 men and 1 woman vote is a myth? Is that? I don't think it happens on the lore or mentioned in any lore in the photo. That's true.
1,000 women with just one man.
That vote is real? Where? Where it mentioned a vote? I thought it was somebody myth. That shit's so fucked up.
Or even one man trapped all alone in his own vault with nothing but a crate of puppets for company. One vault even seemed like it was designed as a personal playground for a sadistic Vault Tech employee who just wanted some poor souls to suffer forever in a virtual reality where he was a god in a world of his own making.
Damn.
You might be wondering if the Vault Dwellers ever figured out what was happening to them.
It's real, but it isn't shown in any games. It's totally real. Hello, person named Humo. Welcome to the stream. It's totally real. I need proof. Give me proof. But if not, but if it's not shown in any games, will it show in any different kind of lore besides the games? Hello, Godzilla. Welcome to the stream. That was 69. Nah, that the shit is makeup. No, I don't believe that. There are many shelters, and not all of them are shown in the game. But I need to know where is the... What? Let me rephrase that. What is that vault mentioned on anywhere else in the media, in the Fallout media? Is it in the books or in the other games or in the different kind of media related to Fallout?
Did any of them learn that
Because
their
that
lives
should
meant
sound
nothing
like
to
makeup.
Vault-Tec, that they had become no more than lab rats in a mad experiment? Maybe the inhabitants thought that their problems were accidental supply errors. Or maybe they realized what had happened and cursed Vault-Tec with their dying breaths.
It would be
Who
shown in
knows if
Fallout
these
5? Yeah,
experiments
right.
turned up any useful information for the sons of whores who devised them. But all the suffering wasn't for nothing. Many
Believe,
vaults did open,
yes, in
even
the
if
books
later
and
than
stuff.
expected. Some of the people who emerged went on to do great things for the wasteland.
I
Parts
really
of what
need
used
to,
be the capital of this land
watch
even
the
has
video,
fresh water, thanks
video
to some
talking
helpful
about
vault
all the
dwellers and
vaults.
technology scavenged from the old vaults. Looters hoping to uncover riches and pre-war supplies should be wary of the vaults, though. Project Safehouse has brought some troubles to the wasteland, too. The super mutants, for instance, are connected to the corporation behind the vaults. Just remember, Wanderer, it isn't worth getting killed by mutants just because you heard about a stash of fancy lad snack cakes inside some old vault's pantry.
Nah, that sounds like me.
There's a whole city of ghouls who came from one of the vaults.
There is Vault 68 where one woman is with 1,000 men. That shit. Nah, don't believe that. Vote 77, the vote with one person integrate a puppet is canon. It doesn't show up in game, but you can find vote 77 jumpsuit and the puppet in game in Fallout 3.
Sometimes you'll meet a ghoul who claims to have been alive back before the bombs fell. Don't pay them no mind, unless they're wearing a Vault 12 jumpsuit. That vault, the door never sealed up all the way.
Oh,
Maybe it
really?
malfunctioned, or maybe it was more of Vault-Tech's shenanigans. But the people inside got just the right dose of radiation to turn into the very first ghouls.
If you like, call me person, so it's not too difficult for you, okay? Okay, persons.
The idea of a piece of the old world sealed fresh is just too romantic an idea for some people to resist. Of course, most wanderers have the sense to stay away from the vaults. If you really can't help yourself, though, there's a city called New Vegas
Vault
where people can get
81.
a look at the inside of a real live vault without having to worry about mutants, ghouls, or old security bots. Right in the middle of the New Vegas Strip is an old vault that they turned into a hotel, so
Damn.
that travelers have some place to sleep while they waste their caps boozing, gambling, and whoring. Tourists can even grab a Vault-Tec lunchbox in mint condition, or a stylish vintage Vault 21 jumpsuit. We don't know how many vaults are still out there undiscovered. They're hidden well, and Vault-Tec like keeping their secrets. Maybe a few of these unknown vaults still have people living inside, the descendants of that first group of survivors. Or maybe there's a thriving society buried right under our feet that doesn't even wonder what the outside world is like. Sooner or later,
Look it up on the Fallout wiki. It lists all the votes and their purposes.
though, that door has to open. Even the fine makers of the vaults couldn't build a system that will contain humanity forever. And when those vault dwellers take their first steps out into the bright sunlight and feel the sands of the wasteland beneath their feet, they'll find the world has changed a lot in 200 years. It's a big, mean world. Their overseer is small potatoes compared to some of the factions that run things now. There are those who view the vaults as candy-shelled morsels filled with treats. Technology is nice, but the vaults held something even more precious. A pure gene pool uncontaminated by radiation or exposure to virus-borne mutagens. There are plenty of interested parties who want to get their hands on a fresh supply of pure strain humans who have yet to be exposed to the harsh wasteland. But that is a story for another day.
Nice. Next episode. Super Mutants and Nightkin.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get to the heart of the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
Dum 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 dum. Gotta go have to take. Okay, goodbye, Axolot. Thanks for tuning in. And you have a great day, my guy. Super mutants.
Vault-Tec presents Tomorrow's Technology Today. At Vault-Tec, we're more
Yay!
than just America's first choice in vault technology. Thanks to military science, we're also your first choice in personal defense. Upon leaving the vault, you may find your neighbors on the surface have changed a lot while you were away. Little Sally Sue, for instance, is gone. And in her place, we see Mr. Scary. Mr. Scary is not our friend. Here at Vault-Tec, your safety is our #1 concern. So we're here to help any post-nuclear nuisance go away.
Oh my god.
Introducing the Mutant Blaster R88, the
Yay!
latest in mutation-removing technology. Simply point this patented device in the direction of the threat, pull the easy-to-use trigger, and watch as Mr. Scary goes away. Forever. Results may vary.
When the Great War annihilated civilization, the survivors lost their loved ones, their homes, and their worldly goods. They endured a daily search for food, water, and medicine. They also had to seek out their lost identities. People have always defined themselves by the work they do, the place they live, the things they own. In the Great War, it wasn't just buildings that were destroyed. Entire cultures were erased from history. In the brutal years that followed, the survivors had to define themselves again, find meaning in their existence, or face a metaphorical loss of their humanity. But a much more literal threat to their humanity was already in place, waiting quietly beneath the desert for someone to stumble across it. Someone did, nearly a century after the war, and that threat came closer to extinguishing humanity than all the bombs and guns of the old wars. A single neutron passing through a strand of DNA can cause a cancerous tumor, but a lifetime of exposure to unprecedented amounts of atomic fallout will have wildly unpredictable results. After a few generations of passing on this defective DNA, a species will begin to mutate. That explains many of the strange beasts running around the wasteland, but not all of them. There's a different strain of mutant out there. They're shaped like men, but bigger. Some of them are more
Always
dangerous
fun
than
when
death
Mitsugun
claws,
is your friend.
stronger than a man in power armor. They call themselves super mutants, and they're not the result of random contact with radiation, but rather a deliberate act of genetic tampering. Holotapes unearthed in pre-war military installations show that the United States government started out with good intentions. Rival nations had attacked America with biological weapons, resulting in a new plague, so America's leaders created their own defensive virus. The plan, originally, was to make a germ that would mutate America's population just enough that they would become immune to the viruses that the enemy might use. In a sense, this forced evolutionary virus worked, but the effects were much more drastic than anticipated. The animal test subjects mutated by it were not only resistant to common biological weapons, they also grew stronger and more intelligent, but monstrously deformed. In Maryland, the virus was placed in a Vault-Tec vault and used as part of their cruel experiments. According to files recovered from a Vault-Tec mainframe, the people who took shelter in that vault were exposed to the virus by their own overseer, the very man assigned to protect them after the bombs fell. After escaping the war, these people suffered even worse than those trapped on the surface. The mutation process is painful, and most people exposed to the virus die a horrible death in a body they don't even recognize as their own. Those who do survive often wish they hadn't, because their very humanity is taken from them. Whatever they look like before mutating, they transform into an enormous, bald, green brute. That sudden loss of identity would enrage almost anyone. Maybe with enough therapy, a person could come to terms with their new body.
They say about the dog and God. Our therapy is so high that we can convince the two identities to actually merge. That shit's so fire. 100 therapy.
But most of the poor creatures suffered from another side effect. reduced cognitive capability. Despite the virus's potential to increase intelligence in some people, most of the super mutants on the East Coast were just plain stupid. In fact, many of their brains were too small to perform even basic autonomic functions like breathing. For those that survived, there were some positive trade-offs. Their strength increased tremendously, as did their size. Even the small ones are nearly 10 feet tall. In the capital wasteland, these beasts continue growing throughout their existence. Wanderers have reported fighting super mutants that are 15 feet tall, and foolhardy adventurers have pumped hundreds of bullets from assault rifles into mutant overlords without bringing them down. Scouts from the Brotherhood of Steel even claim to have fought super mutants that are 20 feet tall and can survive a direct hit from a mini-nuke. The only factor that keeps them in check is that they are infertile and cannot reproduce, at least not the way that they did when they were still human. The first mutants created in that horrid vault might not have been as intelligent as the humans who created them, but they had...
I'm going to continue with my homework. I'll see you later. Okay, goodbye, person.
strength and righteous fury on their side. The mutants turned on their creators and transformed them into the next generation of super mutants. And in time, the vault was nothing but mutants, alone, undying, and just intelligent enough to know that they had been betrayed by humanity. Forcibly stripped of their humanity, robbed of their ability to reason, and transformed into massive brutes, they were an angry horde trapped inside a vault. Rage and boredom are an unstable mixture, and eventually that vault burst. Hundreds of super mutants emerged into a wasteland where their enhanced physical abilities made them better suited to survive than the humans around them. The disorganized humans had only one advantage, and that was their numerical superiority. Outnumbered and unable to breed, the mutants were still cunning enough to understand that they had to boost their ranks by kidnapping humans and exposing them to the virus. Further west, things were more complicated. California and the West Coast had their share of trouble with super mutants, but those mutants, they didn't just suddenly pop out of a vault and rampage like mindless savages. The mutants of the Wasteland's core region were the result of a misguided plan to set the world right. The mutant army was smart enough to scour the lands for new humans to mutate, and to select people with little exposure to radiation. Using humans with DNA undamaged by radioactivity meant they were more likely to keep their intelligence after mutating. The size and capability of this inhuman swarm grew, always hungering for the purest human DNA to serve as the building blocks of a...
Ah, shit. What? The comment flowed too fast. Let me check my pocket chat to see all of the comments. Ah, shit. Let me turn on my YouTube on my phone to actually read the chats. Where is it? Guys, wait for me. Wait for me. Ah, okay. Only the pure human can turn intelligent, right? If they have in contact with radiation, has not intelligent, right? Okay. Depending on if you are on West Coast or East Coast of USA. Hashtag Team Enclave, Team The Master, or Team Institute. Damn. Okay.
master race. This was before the new California Republic had solidified, before the Enclave chose to reveal itself, back when the Brotherhood of Steel kept their technology closely guarded. There was nothing to stand against an army with such organization, such single-mindedness, such unity. Who they had been before no longer mattered. The super mutants weren't divided by old-world notions of race, and they did not bicker over religious beliefs, for they all worshipped the same dark god and claimed that they could hear his voice in their heads. Did this dark god exist? Were the mutants led by some cunning mutant general? Could the master race have a master of its own? Someone or something was certainly behind this new unity movement. No doubt, through much trial and error, this dark god created generations of flawed beasts before finally discovering that the FEV works most effectively on people who have low levels of radiation exposure. Access to pre-war computers revealed that the wasteland held secret communities of uncontaminated vault dwellers whose gene pools had been protected for generations deep beneath the earth where the radioactive fallout couldn't reach them. It's ironic that the super mutant master was done in by the actions of one of these vault dwellers. Regardless of how it happened, with their master gone, the mutant army scattered. The former elite guard of the mutant army have taken the fall of their master the hardest and have become an unpredictable menace. These Nightkin, as they call themselves, were once the best of their species, augmenting their strength and cunning with pre-war stealth technology. They are usually still in possession of the rare Stealth Boy devices and use them without concern for the harm.
The master has the photo of mutants of the region in photo 1-2, but afterwards some other mutants like the vote in question photo 3 is not a origin of the master, if I'm good remember. Sorry I'm rubbish, but your sentence is very hard to understand for me. American might be understand, but I'm not English talker, so it's pretty hard for me to understand. Do you mean do you say the master in photo 3 is not the master in 1 and 2? Is that what you mean?
Harmful effects of prolonged exposure. After decades of constant use, their minds have degenerated and their skin is darkened to a distinctive gray. They're plagued by hallucinations and imaginary friends. Often their jabbering is the only sign
friends, I
that
try
one
my
is
best.
nearby.
Yes.
Due to their tendency
We all
to
try
appear
our
in
best.
unexpected
I
places
struggle with
and engage in
English too.
bizarre behavior. A single Nightkin can be more dangerous than a group of their green-skinned brethren.
You
Some
could
super mutants have formed their own
type in
communities,
French and
following
use
charismatic
ChatGPT
leaders
to
across the
translate
wasteland.
it. It's
Turn a
easier
radio
that
to
way.
the right frequency in the right parts of Nevada, and there is a broadcast coming from a mutant girl who thinks she can take the master's place and guide the mutants to a new utopia. Although she has gathered many followers,
Wait.
her
I
mental
think I missed
instability
something.
ensured. Turn a radio to the right
let's go
than a
back a
group
little.
of their green-skinned brethren.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
super mutants have formed their own communities, following charismatic leaders across the wasteland. Turn a radio to the right frequency in the right parts of Nevada, and there is a broadcast coming from a mutant girl who thinks she can take the master's place and guide the mutants to a new utopia. Although she has gathered many followers, her mental instability ensures that this is unlikely. Some wanderers even speak of outright friendly super mutant companions who accompany them as friends and equals. Given their resilience and long lives, these benevolent creatures could still be out there looking for new adventures and traveling companions. A few diverse communities consisting of humans, ghouls, and mutants alike have popped up, at least for a time. Despite the best efforts to get along, it seems that differences will always reduce people to fighting among themselves. Perhaps that dark god was right, and what the wasteland really needs is more unity. If the super mutants do ever form another army, they're likely to find the wasteland a little more of a challenge this time around. Since their master fell, the world has become a more crowded place, and there are other, better equipped factions of humanity ready to challenge any newcomers for the spoils of the old world. But that is a story for another day.
Okay, we go to the next episode. Brotherhood of Steel, the West Coast.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get to the heart of the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
The Master was in the first game. He created super mutants on West Coast, Northern California, but the Nightkin were his secret task force, aka SWAT team. Okay, understand now. West Coast Brotherhood. I think Ruby said, what Ruby is trying to say is that the various super mutants have different points of origin. Oh, okay. Okay.
A wise soldier knows that it isn't the weapon that matters most, but the hand that wields it. An army equipped with the finest weapons certainly has the advantage in battle. But what happens when the battle is over? Over the millennia, the tools of war have changed, from bronze to iron, then steel, and eventually plutonium.
The West Coast mutants come from the Master and the Enclave, while in the East Coast, those mutants came from Volts and the Institute. Oh, that makes sense.
Mankind grows ever more capable of waging war, and always less capable of using those weapons responsibly. There are those who feel that no one is responsible enough to wield power such as mankind had during the Great War. And then there are those who feel that they alone are worthy. Travelers and merchants in the wasteland have seen towering soldiers in suits of metal armor marching off to battle with laser rifles slung over their shoulders. These are members of the Brotherhood of Steel. It is easy to distinguish them from other armored warriors by their pre-war power armor. Those T-51B armored suits aren't just plates of metal strapped to their bodies. No, the Brotherhood of Steel's armor is a fusion-powered artifact designed before the Great War. It augments their strength, protects them from harm, and marks them as members of an elite order. The Brotherhood of Steel is among the most technologically advanced factions that the Wasteland holds. They are relatively few in number when compared to vast armies like the New California Republic or the Legion. What the Brotherhood lacks in numbers, they make up for in raw power and indomitable courage. The Brotherhood can trace its history back to the Great War. Long before the military base in Mariposa, California gave rise to the Super Mutant Army, it was a research facility. In the days leading up to the Great War, there was a small contingent of soldiers assigned to guard the base and its loathsome contents. That loyal band of men didn't know they were protecting a horribly unethical group of scientists who were engaging in unfathomable experiments. They only knew that it was an important project, that they were there doing their part to fight the good fight and keep their country safe. Eventually, they did learn the awful truth of the forced evolutionary virus, that the base they were guarding was being used to experiment on human test subjects, inmates from military prisons. The knowledge that they unknowingly participated in these atrocities, committed on their own brothers in arms no less, stretched their loyalty to the breaking point. Colonel Spindell, their commanding officer, was unable to cope with this fact. Just a few days after the truth was revealed, he committed suicide, leaving his second command, Captain Roger Maxson, to deal with the aftermath. Today, the Brotherhood
Just
looks
like
up to Roger
Hanlon,
Maxson
come
with
on.
religious reverence. Perhaps Maxson was destined to carry the fire of humanity, or he may have simply had the right balance of honor and pragmatism needed to lead men through the apocalypse. Maxson took it upon himself to take control of the base, ordering the interrogations of the science teams to maintain a semblance of order. As he started to believe that the project was backed knowingly by his government, he attempted to contact his superiors for a response, even going so far as to declare secession from the Union. At the same time, he and his soldiers then gathered their families with them and readied themselves inside their remote base. They waited for a response, any kind of response, and
West Coast and East Coast basically, oh my god, let me read it. Basically has different, oh my god. West Coast and East Coast basically has different canon and lore and backstory, because different game company create each game in a basic sense. Well, Fallout is in Bethesda hands now, so if Paul Tower say otherwise, we have to hear him, because it was a canon, and they have the right to retcon it. So yeah, don't like that, but it is what it is. We all know Bethesda retcon a lot of things in Fallout compared to the Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 1 and 2. Yeah. So there's a lot of what do you say? Sorry for American talk.
anticipating that their own government would never tolerate such an outright insurrection and would have to come and provide answers. But the response never came. Unbeknownst to Maxon, the Great War was already brewing, even as he staged his revolt. If anyone in the government knew about Maxon's rebellion, they no longer cared. The base at Mariposa proved to be a reliable shelter against the onslaught of the atomic war. Maxon, his loyal troops, and their families were among the survivors. His own wife and son were at Maxon's side, and the understanding that his children would live in whatever world he left behind must surely have influenced his actions in the days ahead. Humanity is a stubborn species, not one to die out easily, but mankind's knowledge, civilization, and technology could easily disappear once living memory had passed. Would Captain Maxon's descendants run barefoot through the desert, hunting food with stone spears? Or would they stride through the wasteland clad in power armor, felling their enemies with beams of light and fire? It was not a difficult choice to make as Maxon led his troops and their families from the Mariposa base to a hidden military bunker in what is now called the Lost Hills. There they used what materials they had gathered to build a place of refuge and learning. They preserved their military discipline and technological knowledge from generation to generation, carrying the fire, even if it was hidden beneath the desert. The Brotherhood limited their contact with other communities of survivors, primarily trading for food and other essentials with technology they recovered or made. Sequestered with their precious laser rifles, computers, and power armor, they kept the most fragile of old-world technologies alive, but hoarded that knowledge to themselves. The tribal societies on the surface that had saved pre-war equipment found it wearing out over time. Spare parts were used up, and no one had the capacity to manufacture anything new. As the years turned to decades, technology grew more and more rare. The understanding of how to use it began to disappear, even as people learned how to hunt with spears and cook rad scorpions. In time, Maxon's son assumed command as the High Elder, and his son after him. Other respected members of the Brotherhood form a council of elders beneath the High Elder, who has traditionally been a descendant of the Maxon line, although sometimes the role of High Elder has fallen to a distinguished paladin. Life within the Brotherhood still uses elements of the pre-war American military, with a strict hierarchical structure. Although there are many ranks within the Brotherhood, the three main branches of the organization are the Scribes, the Knights, and the Paladins. Scribes are responsible for scientific research and preservation of ancient knowledge. At one point, they focused their efforts on preservation, but the Brotherhood has grown less concerned with chronicling history than with the development of new weaponry. The title of Knight once referred to armored warriors who fought battles while mounted on an extinct species of animal called a horse. Those knights are a far cry from the Knights of the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood, a knight is responsible for building, repairing, and maintaining the weapons designed by the scribes. Should a knight distinguish themselves, they can eventually become a paladin. The majority of the Brotherhood personnel seen by outsiders are paladins. These elite soldiers cut a swath through the raiders, mutants, and tribal barbarians that stand between the Brotherhood and the technology they desire. While the Brotherhood is eager to fight any bandits or raiders that they come across, they're reluctant to assist the residents of the wasteland in any significant manner. They view most outsiders as intellectual inferiors, unfit to receive technological assistance. Many people have attempted to join the Brotherhood, only to be sent on a suicidal errand to recover artifacts from heavily irradiated regions of the wasteland. Their arrogance has nearly been their undoing on several occasions. When the super mutant menace appeared, Brotherhood scribes were the first to determine that they were a new form of mutant and a clear threat. Yet, it was not a Brotherhood paladin that defeated the mutants. It was a mere wanderer accompanied by a mongrel dog. Much later, the Brotherhood's view that they alone should be allowed to control the wasteland's technology led them to wage a brutal war against the powerful new California Republic. Despite their technological advantage, the Brotherhood lost the war. Nowhere was this defeat more severe than in the Mojave Wasteland. Garrisoned at a pre-war solar power station, the Elder of the Mojave chapter attempted to unlock its dark secrets to use against the NCR in the war. But before he could do so, the NCR forced a confrontation. Outnumbered 10-1, the Brotherhood was forced to retreat after losing half the chapter and the disappearance of their elder. The defeat at Helios was a crippling blow for the Brotherhood. After that, the Mojave chapter of the Brotherhood left the NCR alone, and retreated back to their old base in Hidden Valley. There they can tend to their computers and ray guns as much as they like. They still send the occasional paladin up to the surface to procure crucial supplies, but recent years have proven to be a challenging time for the Brotherhood. Sometimes individuals will leave the Brotherhood for extended periods, often to procure rare resources, but occasionally just so the Brotherhood can discreetly get rid of rebellious youth. Wanderers who prove themselves worthy just might find themselves with a Brotherhood member as a traveling companion for a while. They can demonstrate that their cause is of value to the Brotherhood. And, well, maybe a few travelers will warm themselves by a campfire and let an old scribe tell his tales of the wild wasteland to anyone who will listen. Although the Brotherhood of Steel has seen better days, they are nonetheless a pivotal factor in conflicts affecting the core regions. Records back at Lost Hill show that there's also a disavowed branch of the Brotherhood who struck out east and took it upon themselves to defend the nation's former capital from the super mutants. But that is a story for another day.
Damn it! There we go. Next episode. Now we go to the East Coast.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but
East Coast Brotherhood.
It's not just the strength to lead, but the strength to follow. Not just strength in numbers, but the strength of brothers. There is nothing on this green earth stronger than the Brotherhood of Steel. Because there is nothing on this green earth stronger than Lady Liberty. Democracy is non-negotiable. Join the Brotherhood. Courage today, victory tomorrow.
At a
the
Victorian.
wasteland stretches from one horizon to the other, and very few people can say that they have walked it all. If a traveler sets out from the boneyard on the west coast and walks towards the rising sun in the east, it would take months before they reach the other ocean. It used to take a lot less time. Some of the old flight records at airfields say that people would fly back and forth across the entire country in an afternoon. Not many of those flying vehicles made it through the Great War intact, and the people who use them aren't likely to take on passengers. The roads used to be smoother, and people built a steel bridge over every little river that got in their way. Even when folks didn't have the time to fly from one city to the next, they could still communicate over great distances. At the time of the Great War, this was done through wireless satellite transmissions, but even 400 years ago, people could communicate all the way across the country with a network of wires that were strung up on poles that lined the highways and railroad tracks. Some of those poles are still standing today, but the wires don't go anywhere anymore. So today, if you want to know what's happening on the other side of the horizon, there's only one way to find out. Go see for yourself. Lots of people go their whole lives without traveling more than a few days' walk from the village where they were born. But for organizations like the Brotherhood of Steel, long-distance travel and communication are on the front burner. The Brotherhood of Steel has taken it upon themselves to preserve the technology of the old world. There's plenty of old gizmos and gadgets out in New California, but the truth is, the capital of this nation used to be out on the East Coast. A few decades ago, in 2254, the Brotherhood dispatched a military contingent to the east to recover advanced technologies from cities and bases dotting the eastern seaboard. The Brotherhood sent teams east before, to Chicago, and some folks say they planned a mission to Boston. The Capital Expedition was one of the most ambitious projects the Brotherhood had ever undertaken. A promising paladin named Owen Lyons was chosen to lead a force that would learn what had become of Washington and the surrounding area. After months on the road, the first reports from Lyons weren't promising. They passed through a hellhole that was appropriately named the Pit. This pit of human misery fared worse than most after the Great War. Pittsburgh is what they used to call it back then. Lyons led a scourge of the city, killing any who fought back. Something was recovered that day, but only the Elder knows what it was. When the Brotherhood left the desolate city behind, the caravan carried 20 unmutated children saved by the troops. This was the first of many unconventional moves from Paladin Lyons. He not only rescued those children, but he defied tradition and made them initiates in the Brotherhood. Most of the people in the Brotherhood are born into it, descended from their ancestors that helped form the Order 2 centuries earlier. Taking in an outsider is extremely rare for any Brotherhood chapter, but to recruit a group of children descended from irradiated
He
scavengers
seems like a
and
stand-up
slaves,
guy.
to some, that made Lyons a hero. To others, a pragmatic leader who needed the extra hands. And a few people saw him as a mongrel-loving traitor to the Brotherhood. The capital expedition didn't stop with the pit. They pressed on into a region called Maryland, fighting raiders and slavers wherever they found them, until they came to what was once the capital city of this land. And what they found didn't fill them with hope. Aside from slavers, raiders, and feral ghouls, there are also some of the biggest super mutants they'd ever seen. All of them full of rage and ready to attack on sight. This was nearly 100 years after the Master's super mutant army had been scattered, and Washington had the worst infestation of them Lyons and his soldiers had seen. The disorganized band of humans were no match for the mutants.
Shame it
Out
didn't
east,
last though.
people live in pathetic little villages built in the ruins of highway on-ramps, the basements of pre-war monuments, and even some crazy folks had built a town out of the husk of a bomber plane, complete with a nuclear bomb right in the middle of town. There was
Wow.
no organization that could stand against the mutants. The Brotherhood fought their way into the center of Washington.
Hello
hoping
Tom,
that some
welcome to the
remnants of
stream,
old
listening
world
to the
government might
Storyteller.
be
Yes,
there.
yes I
The
am.
whole town was mutants through and through, dug in right in front of museums that housed priceless artifacts from the old days. Mutants walking the halls of the old Capitol building, where great men and women once wrote the laws that defined their civilization. And the biggest letdown of all was a funny little building with 5 sides. Used to be the headquarters of America's military, back when the military was all that mattered. Lyons found the building had been hit pretty hard. Just 5 crumbling walls around a courtyard. And that's when the Brotherhood's luck turned. Those folks that built this Pentagon built parts of it to last. And deep inside the roots of that building, the Brotherhood found a treasure trove of pre-war intel, equipment, weapons, and best of all, a giant killer robot. His name was Liberty Prime. He was built to instill fear in the hearts of America's enemies 200 years ago. Liberty Prime could crush a soldier in power armor. He could throw nuclear bombs like footballs, and his eyes fired beams of electric death. All the while, he spouted propaganda to terrify his communist foes and inspire his allies. He was the best toy any Brotherhood scribe could ask for. Liberty Prime
best
never
toy.
got to fight the commies he hated so much. A machine that big with integrated energy weapons and computing power to control it all autonomously, it was too much even for America's most fanciful engineers. It took the Brotherhood's most brilliant scribes 20 years to get the thing running. Lyons and his followers fought a hard war of attrition against the super mutant scourge that plagued Washington. They built up the ruins of the old Pentagon into a fortress that they called the Citadel. They recruited the locals to bolster their ranks and built up the finest army that Washington had seen in 200 years. The goal of plundering pre-war military installations became less important to Lyons. How to best defend the people around him filled his waking thoughts. In time, some members of the Brotherhood felt that Lyons had abandoned their original goal of recovering the lost technologies of America's capital. That included the main chapter of the Brotherhood back west, but also some of Lyons' own men. These men abandoned Lyons, formed a band of outcasts, a name they wear proudly to this day. These outcasts took over a pre-war military base on the outskirts of the city. From there, they keep up the Brotherhood's original mission of gathering rare technologies from around Washington, D.C. They dream of one day marching right back to the Lost Hills, their arms filled with shiny new gizmos, and rejoining the rest of the Brotherhood as heroes. Travelers can identify the outcasts by their black and red armor. They don't care for Lyons' knight in shining armor sensibilities, so they even abandon traditional Brotherhood titles like Knight and Paladin. Instead, they use ranks like Defender and Protector. Maybe this change was intended to reflect that they're defending the ideals of the Brotherhood, or protecting technology from the savages of the Wasteland. But they certainly aren't defending the people of the Capital Wasteland. They'll fight off any raiders they come across, and super mutants too, but do not mistake these actions for altruism. When the outcasts clear out a slaver camp, or a nest of feral ghouls, this is only because it furthers the outcasts' cause in some way. They view most people of the Wasteland as ignorant cavemen, unfit to touch a plasma pistol. You do not want to become a problem for them, because they have a knack dealing with problems rather divisively. Their weapons and equipment are among the best available in the wasteland, and their patrols are augmented with combat robots that pack a mean punch. These two factions of the Brotherhood and the Capital Wasteland tend to stay away from each other, but travelers don't want to be anywhere nearby when these cats meet. The sad thing is, the average settler can't tell the difference between the Brotherhood and the outcasts. They're all just people in armored suits shooting each other with ray guns. To most people in the Capital Wasteland, the politics don't matter. They don't care who's killing the mutants and raiders. They just want the trade caravans to run on time. Maybe that's why the citizens of the Capital Wasteland didn't make that much of a fuss when the Enclave set up shop in the capital as well. To them,
Oh, really?
the Enclave was just another group of tin soldiers with
music.
laser rifles talking high ideals. How does someone scavenging through a pile of rusty cans tell the difference? To the average Wastelander, the Enclave's propaganda machine is something to disregard. All just words to someone who won't make it through the night without a dose of Radaway. The Brotherhood of Steel knew the Enclave was trouble right from the start, and eventually went head-to-head with them in a battle unlike anything seen before, even if the Wastelanders didn't understand why they were fighting. But that is a story for another day.
The Enclave. Now this is an interesting part.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your art. As far as anyone knows, this wasteland is the best damned wasteland in the world. When America and China went head-to-head 200 years ago, both sides launched everything they had, and most people assumed that China was blasted back to the Stone Age. The only way to know for sure is to jump in a boat and paddle across the ocean. So folks just assume that China, Europe, Canada, and the rest of the world got hit at least as bad as America did. People look out at this land and some of them just know in their hearts that it's the garden spot of the whole world. Maybe that's why we can't go more than a few decades without someone trying to take over the place. When humanity was just beginning the struggle to rebuild after the war, there was no sign of the government helping out. People formed tribes led by the strongest warriors and the smartest scavengers. The chain of command and the line of succession meant nothing to people who needed things done fast. The closest thing to a government that emerged was tribal elders, or the mayors of small villages. Eventually, in 2189, some of the larger towns in California banded together and formed the new California Republic, but they never claimed to be the government. With no communications from the pre-war government for
I
over a
checked pre-war
century, the
cable
memory of
with
its
a
fate
whole
as new
host of
generations replaced the old,
contingencies.
convinced the old president and his kind were long dead.
Get their ass
The
beat
wasteland
by
ain't so
tribals and
lucky.
literally vote them.
200 years ago, in the last days before the Great War, a secret coterie of America's top-ranking political and corporate leaders decided to duck and cover, big time. They scurried right off the continent, hid inside a secret offshore base, then cowered there while the rest of the country suffered a nuclear holocaust the government had caused. There they stayed, safe and hidden for decades. And the group we know today as the Enclave is the result of 10 generations of breeding between politicians, military brass, and corporate executives. The direct descendants of the people who caused the apocalypse? Not many people would make up a story like that, so it's probably safe to take them at their word about their ancestors. Regardless of who their great-grandparents were, the Enclave certainly has access to an abundance of pre-war tech and weapons. They hoarded it on a man-made island, a metal city that grew out of the ocean floor. It was once used to refine oil, back when people could pull oil right out of the bottom of the sea. The Poseidon oil rig was inaccessible to people on the mainland, so no one knew they were out there until they began their plan to rid the wasteland of everyone who didn't fit their definition of a real American. The Enclave had spent decades learning to improve upon pre-war weaponry. They weren't just collecting artifacts of the old world like the Brotherhood. They were looking toward the future. They had devices more advanced than anything seen in the wasteland, including the Brotherhood. It wasn't just better guns or the ginchiest armor. The Enclave had a fleet of flying vehicles they called vertibirds. Most folk had never even seen a car move unless it was hitched to a team of Brahmin, so these vertibirds gave the Enclave an edge over every other human
Also, the
group in the
vertibird
wasteland.
origin
They could
from
send
the
in drop teams
Enclave.
to kidnap whole villages at a time to use as test subjects. They could suddenly appear at remote locations, then just as quickly disappear. Most importantly, they could travel to and from their offshore base secure in the knowledge that no one could follow. Well, almost no one. There was a person back then who seemed to have a knack for getting vehicles up and running again. People who lived in the den swear up and down that somewhere around 2242, they saw a person in a vault jumpsuit driving around in an old Christless Highwayman, the big green mutant taking up the entire back seat, and a cyborg dog poking his nose out the window.
Oh, that
That's a
sounds
sort
cool.
of tall tale that would be easy to dismiss, but it happened in the same year someone managed to get a ship seaworthy again. They sailed that tanker right out into the ocean to the Enclave's base and took them down. Stories like that, they fill a body with hope. Maybe with enough work, we could all be driving around in pre-war cars, living the good life. In a way, that sort of hope for the future was what the Enclave wanted. And they got it at the cost of their own lives. Their ambition was their downfall. They weren't content to live out their lives in prosperity. They had to take back their country from the people they viewed as subhuman. To do so, the Enclave engaged in the sort of daredevil science that brought about the end, the Great War. They engineered a virus tailored for genocide, performed inhuman experiments, and even took to playing God by creating a species of intelligent deathclaws. Just like their ordinary brethren, they were giant beasts that could rip a man in half, but smart enough to think like you and me, and even mimic human speech.
So the Deathclaw
But even
is from
Deathclaws
the
were nothing when
Enclave.
compared to the Enclave's deadliest creation, a man named Frank.
Frank?
It's hard to say just what Frank Horrigan was. People who saw him in person tended to die quickly and gruesomely. At some point, he must have been a man, a brutal killer, but still human. When the Enclave discovered the old Mariposa military base and the forced evolutionary virus bats within, Horrigan was exposed by accident. He was among the first of a new generation of super mutants created years after the Master's downfall. The arrogance of the Enclave's leaders led them to believe that they could improve upon the virus. The FEV and Horrigan were used for horrid experiments that would make the Master cringe. When they could learn no more from his suffering, the Enclave turned Frank into their most devastating soldier, a mutated cybernetic terror encased in their finest power armor. It's hard to imagine how anyone managed to defeat arguably the most dangerous
Holy
being
shit,
to
that
ever
looks
walk
so
the
cool.
wasteland and bring down his Enclave masters. But somehow, the chosen one of an obscure northern tribe destroyed the Enclave oil rig, forcing the Enclave to flee New California. Leaderless and directionless, they soon rallied behind Autumn, a senior scientist who was contacted by a new Enclave president. It didn't take long for the remnants to reach the East Coast with their vertibirds. They had no fancy oil rig this time. They soon nestled into Raven Rock and Adams Air Force Base, pre-war bases that were nearly as impregnable. They changed their routine in Washington, D.C., promising that they could guide America back to the golden age of malt shops and drive-in movies. On the West Coast, they had a man who claimed to be the rightfully elected president of the United States. But by the time they reached the capital wasteland, things had changed a little.
That
Now
in
their president
AI.
remained unseen and only addressed the public through a swarm of floating propaganda robots that spewed stars and stripes forever, along with political rhetoric so hollow that it sounded like it was written by a random word generator. The war for control of the capital wasteland was a trial for the Enclave. Bereft of their island fortress, without the unstoppable brutality of Frank Horrigan, they had to fight a hard war to gain territory. The Brotherhood of Steel had a strong presence in Washington, D.C., and super mutants roamed the streets looking for humans to abduct. The Enclave still had their technological superiority and their vertibirds. They even took control of pre-war satellites and could fire missiles that had been waiting in the sky for hundreds of years. But their greatest weapons were deceit and manipulation. The Brotherhood relied on a local wanderer for help in combating the Enclave. It is possible that the Enclave managed to convince this individual to implement a more subtle plan that could accomplish their goals even after their repeated defeats at the hands of the Brotherhood. Yet, it did not save them. In 2277, following their disastrous defeat by Liberty Prime at the Purifier, the Enclave was shattered again, with its leaders dead or missing. Its major strongholds were soon annihilated by Brotherhood strikes. The few surviving members probably wished that they had stayed hidden on their private island out in the Pacific. Now the once mighty remnants of America's elite have been reduced to a handful of wistful old men hiding out in the wastelands. Most gave up on the Enclave's vision of the world and settled down to live quiet lives, getting as much peace as a person can in the wasteland. Travelers who visit a certain old motel in Novak can speak with a former Enclave pilot who isn't as bad as the legends make the Enclave sound. She's a tough old broad, but she's no Frank Horrigan. Out east, the Enclave continues to operate in small bands that harass the Brotherhood and anyone else who strays too closely to their remaining outposts, but they are devoid of leadership or any long-term plans. In the west, sharp-eyed travelers can sometimes spot the rusted hulks of crashed vertebrates. There's little else remaining of the Enclave, or at least that the Enclave wishes to reveal. Could an organization with such resources be entirely stamped out? Much like radroaches, the Enclave has shown remarkable resilience. The people of the wasteland should be prepared to deal with another hidden nest of these relics of the old days. For now, the Enclave has joined the ranks of those who fancied themselves the rightful rulers of the wasteland. Their glory has faded along with that of others like the Master. But it seems like some lessons are never learned. There's always someone new looking to claim our wasteland as their own. The new California Republic has flourished even as the Enclave faded, while the NCR has ruled their lands with relative peace and prosperity. Even this period of stability is threatened by a new would-be tyrant that seeks to rebuild yet another fallen empire. But that is a story for another day.
California.
Oh my god.
Here I come.
Copyright. Alright. The NCR.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way.
Tired of life in the new California Republic? Want to enjoy a weekend with no pesky laws or nosy government looking over your shoulder? Come to New Reno and experience the wasteland as it was meant to be experienced. Stock up on your favorite chems like Psycho, Buff Out, and that new Reno sensation, Jet. Enjoy a visit to one of our many brothels, or even become the star of your own adult holotape.
Damn.
No money? No problem. Our merchants accept pre-war magazines, lumps of ore, and use jet nozzles as payment. It's a new world with new rules, and New Reno is the biggest little town in the wasteland.
Somehow mysterious stranger saved me in Fallout New
Humility
Vegas.
is a virtue in the wasteland. One will not find dignity when scavenging in a pile of rubble. Those who are lucky enough to be born into
didn't have
prosperity
that perk
should
in
know
New
that their
Vegas.
way of life can vanish in a moment.
But I have
Likewise,
his gun.
those who come from humble beginnings must believe that they have the potential to build empires, lead armies, or heal the world around them. Each generation has seen would-be conquerors who seek to forge their own utopia from the ashes of the old world. But the
But-
most successful
I need to go to bedroom right now. Give me a few minutes. I will be right back. Okay, I am back.
attempt at rebuilding has come from the most humble of origins. Shady Sands sounds like the sort of thing you'd read on a pre-war postcard. A tropical getaway for bored families in the old world. But Shady Sands was actually a little village in California, made up of the people who came out of one of the vaults. Lucky for them, their vault, number 15, wasn't so bad, at least when compared to some of the other ones. It was designed to open 50 years after the Great War, and its inhabitants were well supplied, even though they were deliberately made up of people.
You need the mysterious stranger perk and have like luck 6 in Fallout New Vegas, and he only appears on that. Yeah, I know that. But I don't have the perk in New Vegas.
Who Vault-Tec knew wouldn't get along. They managed to keep from killing each other till the doors opened. Then most of Vault 15's inhabitants tore through the wasteland, forming some of the worst raider gangs the wasteland would ever see. Even the great Khans today can trace their heritage back to the hooligans who came out of Vault 15. Not all of them are troublemakers like the Khans, though. Quite a few decided to settle down and build a farming town. They had some gadgetry from the vault that made Shady Sands a prosperous little place. But that prosperity also made them a target. Raiders attacked Shady Sands without mercy, even going so far as to
Hello,
kidnap the
Jesus.
mayor's
Welcome
daughter.
to the stream.
Superstitious folk will say it was destiny that brought the Vault Dweller to Shady Sands at their time of need. Or maybe it was just because Vault 13 happened to be located nearby, and people are always in need. For whatever reason, Shady Sands was the first place that tested the now famous Vault Dweller. This was before that kid from Vault 13 became the hero of the wasteland. The example set by the heroics of the Vault Dwellers stuck with the people who lived in Shady Sands. Folk like Eridesh, Tandy, and Seth. Names that will go in the history books once someone starts writing down history again. Junktown, the Hub, and other places that the Vault Dweller passed through all felt the same call to be a part of something greater. The mayor of Shady Sands, Eridesh, guided the most influential communities of the 22nd century. Each one had played some small role in saving the wasteland, and this brought them together. In those early years of this new California Republic, even the Brotherhood of Steel was an ally, their original headquarters being right in the heart of the NCR. That alliance lasted about as long as you'd expect, but it shows that the Brotherhood and the NCR could get along. Eridesh was made president for life of the NCR. He lived a good long life, but like many old men, he wanted to head out on a few final adventures before death came calling.
Aww.
He disappeared out in the wasteland one day, probably looking for his old friend, the Vault Dweller. We're not sure exactly how it ended for Eridesh. When they write those NCR
Is he
history
a
books, they'll
companion
probably make up
from
something
Fallout
suitably
1 or
noble
2?
and heroic for his last adventure. With Eridesh gone, the natural successor was his daughter Tandy. The official records don't like to dwell on the way that President Tandy once had to be rescued from the Khans by the Vault Dweller. Getting kidnapped wouldn't seem very presidential, but that sort of humbling experience helped mold her into an ambitious leader who was wise enough to know the dangers of the wasteland around her. She led the NCR until she was nearly 100 years old.
Damn, he
A
has.
ripe old
She
age
has
for
got
someone who
that.
never mutated.
Yeah.
And she spent the whole time trying to unify the towns north of the NCR. While places like the Hub and Boneyard were glad to join the NCR, up north things were a bit trickier. The Republic had access to some pre-war tech from Vaults 15 and 13, but that was nothing compared to the wonders of Vault City. Vault City was the community that surrounded Vault 8, and it was the embodiment of everything that Vault-Tec had promised people before the war. It was one of the few vaults that opened right on schedule, just a few years after the war, and the happy people inside emerged to build their own private Garden of Eden, with a little help from Vault-Tec's Garden of Eden creation kit. The folks that ran Vault City had a stranglehold on their territory. They had the finest medical equipment available, and a security force to defend it. Plus, plenty of outsiders who were willing to become servants in exchange for a safe place to live. They didn't need to be part of this new California Republic, and neither did nearby towns like New Reno, Redding, and Broken Hills. Even the NCR's mother vault, Vault 15, had fallen into disrepair by the time that Tandy was nearing the end of her presidency. And Vault 13, well, the original inhabitants had been relocated by the Enclave, and a new group of occupants had taken up residency. Good conversationalists by all accounts, but not the sort that most people would want as neighbors. The NCR was so keen on expanding their territory that they even resorted to playing dirty tricks on Vault City to get them to join and share their medical supplies with the rest of the Republic. For all its good intentions, the NCR was heading down a road to the cutthroat politics of the old days. The wasteland isn't prone to unity. Many would-be rulers discovered that the hard way, and it was a lesson the NCR was all too familiar with. In the years since, the NCR has had a series of presidents, none of which managed to rule with the insight of Aradesh or Tandy. The new leadership has still added some territory to the Republic, though, parts of Nevada, Arizona, Oregon, and Mexico too. With the Pacific Ocean to the west, that only leaves the east for further conquest, and the current leadership of the new California Republic had been steadily spreading their influence through Nevada and Arizona for years. Other factions had long since held territory there too, like the Brotherhood of Steel. An alliance between the NCR and the Brotherhood might have held up if there hadn't been such an abundance of amazing technology at stake. Just a little ways over the border in Nevada, the Brotherhood had discovered a solar power station called Helios 1. It not only had the potential to provide energy for half the wasteland, but it also controlled an orbiting satellite that could focus sunlight into a deadly beam. The Brotherhood always loved their death rays, and they could never let anyone else get their hands on something like that. It was an unprecedented struggle between the Brotherhood and the NCR for control of the facility. To the Brotherhood, it meant keeping a devastating weapon in safe hands, and to the NCR, it meant providing electricity to all of their citizens. Good intentions all around, but everyone was still certain that their side deserved Helios more than the other side. The Brotherhood Paladins have terrifying weapons in their metal-clad
Everyone
hands,
thought they
but the
do the
NCR
right
has soldiers
thing.
gathered from all over the Republic. A vast army of patriots who are willing to die for the idea of building a nation, state by state. Although numbers aren't the only thing that the NCR has, they have the Rangers. Even before the Great War, the West had need of soldiers and lawmen. For centuries, some of the finest of them adopted the title of Ranger, and today's NCR Rangers are made up of the best men and women that the Republic has to offer. They fight to bring law and order to this new West. That's a powerful motivation for those who can temper their optimism with resolve. The Rangers aren't feared because of the power of their weapons or the sophistication of their armor. The Rangers are feared because of their skill and relentless loyalty to the Republic. They aren't born and bred for this elite position like in the Brotherhood or the Enclave. The Rangers are but humble soldiers who volunteer for the privilege of serving their fellow man. With such loyalty in their multitudes of soldiers, it shouldn't be a surprise that the NCR seized Helios 1. With it, they just might have enough power to light up everything west of the Colorado River. That is, if they can ever get the thing running properly. But
Your overzealous imperialist bureaucracy is cringe. Damn. What is this?
Helios is only one of their plans to restore civilization to the world. Right in the middle of the desert, there's a great river and a huge pre-war dam that once pulled electricity right out of the flowing water. A feat of engineering, this great wall was named after one of the old presidents of a dead empire. The Hoover Dam, they called it. The NCR wanted that dam, but they discovered they weren't alone. The Colorado River had kept the Republic separated from another army, a veritable legion of bloodthirsty killers. But that is a story for another day.
Caesar Legion.
You've experienced the
Excuse
Fallout
me.
series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get to the heart of the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
Please stand
This
by.
presentation brought to you by Vault-Tec. Congratulations on receiving the all-clear signal.
What
You
is
are now
this? Oh my
authorized
god,
to
it's a
exit
little
your
too loud for
Vault-Tec
me.
facility. But remember, while while you've been safe inside your vault for the past few years, other people haven't been so lucky. Society on the outside has probably changed, and you should be prepared for a variety of possible scenarios. The area around your vault could be populated by cannibalistic mutants,
Yay.
gigantic insects,
Yay.
or maybe even feral children who have enslaved all the grown-ups.
Yay.
Who knows what kind
What?
of kooky civilization has formed, but the important thing is that you learn to roll with the punches. Remember, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and you'll get along just fine with everyone you meet.
Damn.
A long time ago, there was a saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That made more sense back when every child in the country went to school 5 days a week and learned their history from a big room full of books. Of late, it can be a mite hard to find a history book that hasn't been burned or rotted through. So it seems like the good folk of the wasteland are doomed to repeat a lot of history's mistakes. There's a certain man in Nevada who's deliberately repeating history's mistakes. Calls himself Caesar, spoken by his followers as Kaiser. He's not the first to go by either of those names. A good 2,000 years ago, the first Caesar ruled an empire on the other side of the world. That Caesar probably never even imagined that there was a whole continent over here full of new people to enslave. Well, this new Caesar of the post-apocalyptic world is out to finish what the first one started. Rather than aiming to restore America to what it was in the days before the Great War, Caesar is forging a new nation, using the Roman Empire as some form of twisted inspiration. That's a funny idea for someone to get in their head. Of course, this Caesar had an unconventional upbringing. He was born in 2226 out west in the Boneyard,
He's from the
ruins of
Boneyard.
what used to be Los Angeles. He didn't stay there long. His mother took him away when he was just a baby and raised him with the followers of the apocalypse. Despite their name, these followers
The wasteland may also now be ruled by General Nova. Approach with caution. You damn right. So the teachers used to be with the followers. So in the Caesar ending, we can see he's sparing the follower, let them do what they do in the New Vegas. So I think he still has some soft spot for the followers. I think in his eye, the people in the wasteland just animals, need to be restrained, put in a cage. But he didn't think the same about the followers, because he thinks the followers are the good guys, or a real human needs to be free, but he's not seeing the same with the wastelander, because he sees them just a bunch of animals.
aren't one of those doomsday
That's why
cults.
he's so he seems so ruthless, but he seems like a stand-up guy to the followers. His contradiction is very interesting, to me at least.
They're just a group of do-gooder intellectuals who try to preserve the knowledge of the old world. They also keep records about the present, so we know all there is to know about who Caesar was before he declared himself emperor. He used to be a bright young man named Edward Sallow. He was chosen to go on a follower's expedition to study the tribespeople of the wasteland, and perhaps he was a little too intelligent and educated to be sent out among the savages.
Yeah, he
He viewed
thinks
them with a
the
mixture of
tribal are
sneering
just a
contempt
bunch of
and
animals.
misguided pity. He felt it was his duty to civilize them at any cost.
Yes, I think
In a
that's the
stroke
case.
of irony, it turns out that those uncivilized lands had some books from before the war. Books that weren't reduced to a pile of ash. Rare historical records, including an account of the original Caesar's war in Gaul. Sallow could have seen the history of Rome a warning about an empire that was doomed to fall. But instead, he saw something of himself in Caesar, and decided to follow his example.
Not animal per se, but how degenerate the ancient and everything west of the Mojave have become since their inceptions. Now I think the Caesar view the people from the wasteland beneath the human. I think he's think the wastelander are very let's say uncivilized, need to be put in a cage, quote unquote, so he's enslaved them. Animal is a little far-fetched, but I think he's think the wastelander beneath human. Because he see the tribal so uncivilized that he think he need them to be enslaved.
Even if it meant knowingly repeating the mistakes of the past. The Romans described in those old books were, by the standards of their
NCR
time, the
wastelander
most
not
civilized
important.
group in the known world. So mighty was their empire, they even had it better than most folks today. Food, fresh water, roads, and libraries. The problem is that only
I think I
some
can
Romans had it that
understand
good.
the Caesar
Their empire
view.
was built on conquest and slavery, and the people on the bottom rung of society had it about as bad as a mole rat in a death-clawed den. Under the new title of Caesar, Edward Sallow forged the tribals of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado into an army patterned after the Legion of Rome. Their entire society was converted to the war effort, and they used merciless strategies to decisively end their conflicts. 86 tribes in all, and each one they encountered was either assimilated or annihilated. The men who survived are forced to become soldiers in the Legion. All traces of their original tribe are eradicated, and these slave soldiers have but one option in life: to die in the service of their conquerors. With each new victory, the Legion grows in number, leaving behind no one to oppose them. In his own way, Caesar is bringing order to the wasteland, one genocide at a time. The women of conquered tribes are not allowed even the dignity of dying in combat. The Legion's strictly regimented society forbids such equality, no matter how skilled those women may be as warriors. This rigid separation ensures that half of the Legion's forces fight, while the other half breeds the next generation of slaves. Caesar would say that slavery is a fitting punishment for the weak and cowardly members of the defeated tribes, a chance for them to prove themselves of worth in their new life. A compelling argument, but nothing can justify being born a slave. Children born into the Legion are separated from their parents, given no knowledge of the culture of their ancestors, and identify themselves only as one small part of the vast Legion. They are all destined to die in Caesar's servitude. Caesar's love of the old times and martial virtues does not prevent him from arming his men with weapons developed in the 21st century. If throwing javelins at their enemy won't get the job done, then the Legion will reach for assault rifles or even more advanced weaponry. They do prefer to fight hand-to-hand whenever possible, and some of the Legion's men carry kinetic energy hammers and ballistic gauntlets enhanced with 21st century technology. Caesar is the absolute ruler of this army, and disobedience is punished with death. A slow death. The Legion burns people alive, crucifies them on poles along the roadside, and forces them to fight to the death in duels for Caesar's amusement. Failure is punished with equal cruelty. Every member of the Legion knows that it is better to die in battle against the enemy than to stand before Caesar in shame. Even his highest-ranking commanders, his legates, can suffer his wrath. A few years ago, Caesar proved this when his army came upon its first worthy opponent, the new California Republic. Even as the Legion was spreading westward, the NCR was exploring territory on their own eastern border. The two nations clashed on the banks of the Colorado River for control of the Hoover Dam in 2277. It proved to be the first defeat for the Legion. The NCR has the biggest, most organized army in the wasteland, and their rangers are some of the fiercest, most cunning fighters in the wastes. The NCR feigned retreat across the dam and led the Legion to the town of Boulder City, back when there was a town there. The place is a graveyard now, filled with the bones of Legion soldiers who charged to their own doom, certain that the NCR was fleeing in terror before Caesar's might. Caesar himself would have been clever enough to deduce that this was a trap, but he had delegated the task to one of his legates who failed to see that the NCR was only pretending to run. When the Legion reached Boulder City, they found enough explosives to level just about everything in town. Even with the loss of over 100 soldiers during the battle, the NCR managed to rout the Legion and
Shout out
secure
to
the
those
dam
Rangers.
and leave the Legion stuck on the other side of the river. The legate who organized that disastrous attack learned just how terrible Caesar's fury can be. He was one of Caesar's oldest friends, Joshua Graham. They met back before Edward Sallow started calling himself Caesar, but that did not earn Graham any mercy. For his failure in the Battle of Hoover Dam, he was set on fire and thrown down the biggest hole in the wasteland, the Grand Canyon. There are tales of people surviving all sorts of fates. Men mutated into blobs of goo without dying. Cyborgs that are more machine than man. Hell, there's even a lucky bastard that survived having a tree growing through his brain. Then there's Joshua Graham. People swear that they saw a burned man walk out of the Grand Canyon not long after the Battle of Hoover Dam. Might have been Graham. Might have just been an old ghoul out scavenging. Either way, the possibility of Graham still being alive is just one more worry for Caesar these days. Like any emperor, Caesar knows that his military must constantly consume new territory. The Legion produces little and has left nothing but destruction in its wake. The only way for it to survive is conquest. But now the Legion is stalled, camped out on one side of the Hoover Dam, while the NCR waits on the other. Caesar can appreciate the potential of the Hoover Dam. It can generate enough electricity to power the empire he intends to build. For now, though, the Legion prepares a massive force to take it from the NCR. Legionaries cross the river in small groups on
Hello,
barges and have
relative.
established some
Welcome back
camps
to
on
the
the western
stream.
banks as a brazen
Going
affront
back
to
to
the
Uta
NCR's
in
authority.
season 3.
There are
Nice,
Legion
nice.
soldiers west of the Colorado River to cause plenty
Can't
of
wait,
trouble for
dude.
settlers
Can't
and
wait for
soldiers out
season
there.
3.
They need a fresh supply of slaves, although the Legion will sometimes burn whole towns to the ground and torture the citizens to death as a
What
symbol
an
of their might.
incredibly
The
well-written
horrific tales
character.
of these attacks
Say
help
to
remind
Jesus.
people in the West that the Legion is coming
That's
eventually.
ironic, isn't it?
Caesar sees the NCR as a personal challenge, as though everything that's happened west of the river for the last 200 years all happened just so Caesar would have a worthy foe to defeat. And he's definitely up there in that fort of his, planning for the next battle at Hoover Dam. But the dam is only the first part of Caesar's plan, though. He doesn't intend for his army to roam the land indefinitely. He wants to found a new capital city for his empire. And just a stone's throw from the dam is a town that already has a lot in common with ancient Rome. It's a decadent cesspool of
Copyright
every
music.
vice that a body can desire. A new Rome. A new Vegas. A place where the walls are high enough to keep out the worst
You can
critics that
say
Iceland can throw at them. And the
Caesar
streets are safe
Palace.
to walk thanks to an army of security bots. Not to mention a plentiful supply of leggy showgirls and roulette tables. The problem is, New Vegas already has its own tyrant. He's been there since before the bombs fell 200 years ago, and he plans to stay there for 200 more. But that is a story for another day.
Needs the house. New Vegas.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way.
Las Vegas. Kind of a missed opportunity that Caesar Palace is not in the same game as Caesar Legions.
Everyone loves the Pip-Boy 2000, but
Yippee!
you have an active on-the-go lifestyle. Your friends at Robco know that you need a personal information processor that suits your adventurous attitude. So, we're giving you all the features of our Pip-Boy in an ultra-portable new form. Introducing the Pip-Boy 3000. With this smart device, you won't have to waste time thinking for yourself. This feat of Robco engineering keeps track of your vitals, manages your finances, tells you where to go, and it's stylish. The Pip-Boy 3000 is our most durable Pip-Boy ever. It could even survive a nuclear blast. Get the Pip-Boy 3000 today. Our sale bots are standing by. And coming for Christmas 2077, the Pip-Boy 3000S. Pre-order yours while supplies last.
They don't make them like they used to. Of course, they don't make much of anything anymore. But back before the war, they built most things to last. Just about all of the robots puttering around the wasteland were constructed back in the 21st century. The amazing thing is, they're still functional after 200 years. Most of them were made by the General Atomics Corporation, but the Securitrons that are rolling around New Vegas, those were made by a competing company called Robco Industries. It's no coincidence that New Vegas is crawling with Robco robots, because the same man who founded the company back in the 21st century is still calling the shots there today. He's over 250 years old by now, but time hasn't slowed him down at all. He's a real pre-war industrialist, and they don't make them like that anymore. Robert House was born in a time when men were only expected to live about 100 years, let alone close to 300. There are a few other unusual individuals out there who've managed to stay alive for that long, one way or another. No one's actually seen Mr. House, so some folk think he might have been one of the very first ghouls, gifted with long life, but cursed with a rotting radioactive body. Others think he might be a mutant. The forced evolutionary virus grants indefinite life to mutants, but the first mutants didn't appear in Vegas until decades after the war, and House would have probably died of old age by that time. His associates in New Vegas say he's just a resourceful man who preserved himself somehow, kept himself going all this time on the best life support equipment that pre-war society had to offer. He set up shop inside one of the big casinos on the Vegas Strip back before the war, and hasn't set foot out since. He only communicates through computer screens, so as far as anyone knows, he could be a brain in a jar, or just a sentient computer that thinks it's a man. We do know a lot about House's life from before the war, thanks to history books. He was quite a flamboyant figure before the bombs fell, consorted with starlets, mingled with heads of state, and built robots for the military, so his exploits were gossiped about in books, magazines, and holotapes. He was born in New Vegas around 2020, back when it was called Las Vegas. He came from a wealthy family, was orphaned at a young age, then cheated out of his family fortune. Mr. House didn't need to inherit his family's wealth, however, because he inherited something far more precious, his father's business acumen and knack for engineering. It didn't take long for him to amass a fortune of his very own. House founded Robco in 2042 while he was barely in his 20s. Made a fortune building robots, including those clunky Protectron robots that are still clumping their way around the wasteland. Those bucket of bolts are slow and not too bright, but they're durable and versatile enough that they're used all over the country. Modified Protectrons have been turned into everything from a sheriff to a sex bot.
Damn.
For the more rugged technophiles, that is. The technophiles also love another product from Robco, the Pip-Boy Personal Information Processor. They were issued to everyone inside the vaults, probably to make it easier for Vault Tech to monitor how their little social experiments were progressing. But those little gadgets were built to last, and plenty of notable vault dwellers have used that old Robco tech to make their way through the wasteland. House and his company also had a hand in building Liberty Prime, a gigantic killing machine that the Brotherhood of Steel dug up out east. He seemed awfully smug about that one, even had a portrait commissioned of himself standing next to his monstrosity, like a proud father. He never actually got to see Liberty Prime running, though. House was smart enough to see the Great War on the horizon, and he turned his focus from national defense to keeping his hometown Las Vegas safe. Mr. House knew that an apocalyptic war was coming eventually, and in the years leading up to the war, he pulled every string he had to ensure that Vegas would make it through. He poured all of his resources to turn his Lucky 38 casino into a fortress with enough firepower and processing speed to shoot down or hack and disable any missiles that managed to make it near the city. He even built himself a personal army of Securitron robots that were vastly superior to the old Protectrons. Faster, smarter, with bigger weapons, and all of them under his personal control. He sealed himself up inside the Lucky 38 and planned out his new world while waiting for the old one to end. But something went wrong with his scheme. House and his army of robots were quiet for close to 2 centuries after the war. He saved the city from the bombs and missiles, and then just disappeared. His tower fortress was nothing more than a lifeless concrete spire growing out of the middle of the desert. Vegas itself deteriorated in the decades after the war. The roulette wheels stopped spinning, the slot machines ceased regurgitating coins, and the tourists were overwhelmed by savage tribals that invaded the Strip. These tribes didn't care about the once great city they inhabited. They took no notice of that impenetrable tower in the middle of the Strip. They spent their days looting and murdering. Some of them even engaged in acts of cannibalism in a town that once boasted all-you-can-eat buffets on every corner. Savages like them would have been exterminated by the new California Republic if they had lived further west. They would have been assimilated by Caesar's legion if they were on the other side of the Colorado River. But in Vegas, they maintained their ways for generations, even as civilization slowly spread through the wasteland around them. There wasn't much reason for Mr. House to interact with the outside world when he was surrounded by these wild men. It took the arrival of NCR scouts to give him hope of rebuilding the world. At that first sign of civilization, New Vegas, a beacon that could be seen all over the Mojave, lit up. When House's robot army suddenly appeared, the first thing it did was set about taming the tribals. The Securitrons were useful minions, but House knew that he would need human hands to restore Vegas to its former glory and draw the interest of the NCR. Under the threat of annihilation, the tribes either gave up their wild ways and allowed Mr. House to remake them in the image of Vegas in its heyday, or left.
Yeehaw!
One band of savages took on the airs of old-world entertainers from House's youth. They shed their gecko-hide clothes, tossed aside their spears, began dressing in pre-war suits and quoting long-dead singers. Maybe some of the other tribes thought they'd gone soft for living in a swanky casino, but these chairmen cocked their hats and swaggered right to the top of House's news strip. House knew he'd also need a lower class of thug, so he also took in a tribe of brutes that could be counted on to perform the most unspeakable acts. The Omertas were dressed up in suits and ties, but they were no gentlemen. Their fortune was built on the worst form of slavery.
Hey, hello,
They were the
blind
flesh
thumbs.
peddlers and chem pushers of the strip.
Subscribe,
Their
new
services are
subscribers.
man. They have become an essential part of New Vegas's economy. Although the town is a magnet for the seedier denizens of the wasteland, House has also ensured that New Vegas has something to offer those with more refined sensibilities. The White Glove Society is House's most successful attempt to recreate the splendor of the pre-war days. Once the White Glove Society was no more than a pack of wild animals doing whatever it took to survive. But now they operate the ritziest hotel in town, serving the most succulent steaks in the wasteland. Diners will need to put on their finest attire, though, because the White Glove Society prefers patrons with marvelous fashion sense, if not particularly good taste. These three families ensure that House is at the center of a thriving city. As former rivals, these tribes endlessly plot against each other, but House's Securitrons ensure that there is no overt conflict, that the stores, brothels, and casinos stay open. By the standards of the wasteland, New Vegas is a veritable utopia. That's why it has drawn the interest of both the New California Republic and Caesar's Legion. Each empire must continue expanding their territory, and New Vegas is the golden egg trapped right in the middle. For now, House remains within his stronghold. Walls of steel separate him from the hedonistic paradise of his own city. Outside, two great armies prepare for a war that could crush New Vegas. House's army of robots and tribals is hardly enough to fend off both the NCR and the Legion. Unless he has some secret weapon that hasn't come into play yet. He waited in silence for 200 years.
For all the factions and leaders, there's something to be said about the cycle of growing an empire only to have them fall all the same. Still, NCR and Brotherhood still keep going. Yeah, they will eventually fall. That's human nature. You united, then you will separate. That's just human nature. It doesn't matter how long it takes.
Could there be some missing linchpin needed for that scheme he began before the war? It wouldn't be the first time someone in Vegas had an ace up their sleeve. No matter who holds the trump card in the war ahead, there'll be plenty of innocent people who'll cash out. Caesar views the soldiers in his legion as expendable pawns who exist only to die in his name. The NCR's leadership has committed mass slaughter of those who stand in the way of their noble but misguided goals. And House's minions have no mercy for the tribes that refuse to yield to his vision of New Vegas. Trapped within this triangle are countless smaller settlements and tribes, peoples and societies that are constantly in danger of being eradicated or assimilated. Of them, none have suffered greater struggle than the Great Khans, a once proud band of raiders who, like the NCR, can trace their roots back to the opening of the first vaults. It can be difficult to feel pity for a gang of chem-dealing raiders, but the Khans have faced extinction time and time again, proving to be one of the most resilient groups in the wasteland.
The cycle will keep happening. Just look at China in the last century or so, yeah.
Kind of resilience is something even Mr. House could respect. But that is a story for another day.
Next episode. The Great Cons.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your
This is Sally. 6 months ago, Sally was an ordinary girl who enjoyed baking cupcakes with Mom and playing with her neighborhood pals. But Sally felt like she wasn't as clever as the other children. That's when her new friend, Butch, offered her something called Mentats.
Uh-oh.
They looked like candy, but they were actually recreational chemicals, or chems for short. The Mentats made Sally feel like the smartest girl in the world, but only for a little while. When they wore off, she felt dumber than ever, and before long, she was nothing but a hooligan, a criminal, a dope fiend. It could happen to your children too, even with just one Mentat. So store your chems safely and out of the reach of children. The proceeding was a public service message from MedTech, makers of the Fixer anti-addiction pills, now available at your local Super Duper Mart.
I heard the Mentats like. What are you doing?
At night, the wasteland is dotted with towns that light up the darkness. Each one is some settler's attempt at rebuilding civilization. The wasteland holds endless wonder.
Empire come and go, but civilization is just war, and war never changes. But I guess that is a story for another day.
And mysteries. You'll never see them from within the walls of one village. Life on the road doesn't leave time for growing crops or herding Brahmin, so some people survive by taking what they need. Such predatory behavior is hardly commendable, but it does take strength to live the life of a raider, and who doesn't respect strength? Every few miles, there's some new group of raiders on the prowl, always certain that their strength gives them the right to prey on the weak. And every damned one of them has a theatrical name and flamboyant heraldry. The Fiends, the Jackals, the Yakuza. Every pack of chem addicts that
I haven't seen the Yakuza. What game are they came from? Are they from Fallout 3? I never heard of the Yakuza in the photo.
stumbles across a history book, just decides to play dress-up and terrorize the nearest village. Fortunately, most raider gangs don't last long. Entire groups can be exterminated in one fight gone wrong, or the whole lot can overdose on a batch of Med-X that's been cut too pure. But a few of the raider gangs have managed to stick around for generation after generation, and the most resilient by far is the Khans. A long time ago, many years before even the Great War, there was a place called Mongolia, home of the Khans, some of the toughest warriors the world had ever seen. They were led by a man called Genghis, and under his rule they came closer to conquering the world than anyone else. Even 1,000 years later, people still know the name. The Khans of the modern wasteland aren't actually descendants of the originals from Mongolia. They came out of Vault 15 and 2121, along with a few other raider gangs, the people who founded the village of Shady Sands. The folks that settled down in Shady Sands couldn't wait to start rebuilding civilization, but the rest, they took a liking to the wasteland.
Yakuza are only in random encounters around New Reno?
Just as it was. Some of those survivors from Vault 15 formed a gang called the Vipers, a band of kooks that worship snakes. They'll be remembered in the holotapes because one of them managed to kill the High Elder of the Brotherhood of Steel a century ago. But the Vipers are nothing compared to the most infamous raider gang that came from Vault 15, the Khans. The Khans value strength above all other qualities. When that vault opened, they knew that the world had become a place where the strong would thrive while the weak became prey. For years, they ranged through the remains of Arizona and California, stealing what they could carry, raising anything left behind. Under the leadership of a man called Death Hand, they thrived in an age where other bands barely managed to survive at all. In time, Death Hand grew old, his body covered in scars from a lifetime of battle. Even then, there was only one person who had the might to best him in a fair fight: his own son, Garl. The Khans would only accept leadership from the greatest warrior among them. There is no truer test of a person's strength than a fight to the death. Garl killed his own father for the right to lead the Khans, and took the title of Death Hand as his own. He led the Khans in their raids against Shady Sands and other towns in New California for years afterwards. Many settlers considered him nothing more than a bullying, low-life brute, but others suspected that Garl Death Hand was merely seeking a worthy foe. If Garl had played his cards right, he might have lived long enough to have a son of his own and one day pass on the title of Death Hand. But before he could produce an heir, he met his end. In 2162, Garl and his gang had kidnapped a girl from Shady Sands. She turned out to be the mayor's daughter, Tandy. That was a step too far for the people of Shady Sands, and it wasn't long before some do-gooder in a Vault 13 jumpsuit showed up at the primary Khan's camp demanding that Garl release her. The legend of the Vault Dweller had just begun, and the Khans couldn't have known just what they were up against. But Garl had finally found a true equal to face in combat.
Hello, Need the first reaction to the first video. The first video of the Storyteller is in this stream. This is actually the first time I react to the Fallout Storyteller. The last react stream is I am reacting to Epic Deck videos, so you're not missing anything.
The Khans were hardly the greatest threat that the Vault Dweller had to deal with, and they weren't even mentioned in the Dweller's memoir. Once a damsel in distress, Tandy went on to become president
The
of
true
the New California
canon for the
Republic,
law is
where she turned the
Storyteller.
NCR into a powerhouse that Khans could never hope to match. Only one Khan managed to survive the Camp Massacre, but a true equal to face in combat. The Khans were hardly the greatest threat that the Vault Dweller had to deal with, and they
Call
weren't
me
even
Blue?
mentioned
Okay,
in the
Blue.
Dweller's memoir. Once a damsel in distress, Tandy went on to become president of the New California Republic, where she turned the NCR into a powerhouse that Khans could never hope to match. Only one Khan managed to survive the Camp Massacre, a boy named Darien, who hid during the ruckus. Darien spent the rest of his life trying to atone for his act of cowardice. He created a gang called the New Khans and spent 80 years harassing Tandy and the people of her New California Republic.
What episode of the Storyteller are you watching? Season 1, episode 9. I've been watching 9 episodes. Yeah. The first episode was in this stream too, so you can go back and watch.
What Darien lacked in courage, he made up for in leadership. His new Khans were a bunch of real bruisers, maybe even tougher than the gang from the old Death Hand days. These new Khans were such terrors that they even took control of Vault 15, right under the NCR's nose. Tandy couldn't let that stand, so she sent an operative to deal with the new Khans. That operative just happened to be a direct descendant of the Vault Dweller who had slaughtered the original Khans. The old bird probably got a laugh at that. By that time, Darien was a half-crazed old man, but he went down with a hell of a good fight. The Vault 15 security system recorded his final battle, and he would have made Garl Death Hand proud. Even though Darien was dead, the Khans lived on. A handful of raiders away from Garl's camp survived and carried the legacy of the Khans with them. The largest group lived away on the fringes of the NCR under Papa Khan, called the Great Khans to honor their illustrious heritage. In 2267, Papa led them east where they discovered the ruins of Vegas. That was years before Robert House had unleashed his army of robots. The Great Khans found a home among the hardened tribals that inhabited Vegas back then. There the Khans could test their mettle against the other warriors. They wouldn't have to worry about the Vault Dweller's great-grandkids showing up to kill them all. The Great Khans had a few good years there, until Mr. House decided to send out his Securitron army and civilize the inhabitants of his town. About the same time, the NCR had begun to spread east into Nevada, too. The Great Khans know more than anyone that annihilation is an ever-present threat in the wasteland. They suddenly faced a war against two armies, so they chose to abandon Vegas rather than tempt fate. Outside of Vegas, they were of little interest to House, but they still fought NCR troops at every opportunity. The new California Republic had grown increasingly ruthless in its efforts to acquire new territory. There are those in the Mojave who saw the Great Khans as victims of NCR hegemony. The two groups had been enemies for generations, and their battles were fought with little mercy from either side. The NCR eventually won a decisive victory, though, the Battle of Bitter Springs, although most people around the Mojave call it the Bitter Springs Massacre. Bitter Springs was identified by NCR Intel as the Khans' base of operation. The NCR cornered the Great Khans and invaded the camp. That's when the
Wonder which faction would join. It depends if you're in the west or east coast, since some factions are way too far for them to interact unless they are the enclave. I think I joined 9. I joined neither. I will create my own factions.
Khans started evacuating the camp down
because
a nearby
I
canyon.
am a
First,
very
Khan troops
ambitious
stationed opened fire
woman.
and killed most of the gang. They thought they were shooting raiders flanking their troops. They ended up killing women and children, old folks too.
Yeah, this is
Almost
fucked
anyone
up.
who was at Bitter Springs has a different account of what happened. It might have been a mistake, some miscommunication between the NCR commanders, or bad reconnaissance at the site, or it could have been a deliberate act of genocide. More than a few NCR troops just walked away from the army after that. Even if the massacre can be blamed on bad intel, the soldiers who pulled the trigger still had to hold themselves accountable for their own actions. Some of them have taken jobs as mercenaries protecting towns in the Mojave. Get them drunk enough and they might talk about what they did at Bitter Springs, but most of them are drinking just so they can forget. The Khans, of course, can never forget Bitter Springs. The massacre left the Great Khans a broken people. The ones that survived limped away to the west, way out in Red Rock Canyon. There, the Great Khans are out
Also say Terra Nova wouldn't judge through them.
of the way of the NCR and New Vegas. They lack the brute force and numbers to survive as raiders like in the old days. And now they make a living by manufacturing chems and selling them to other raider gangs. Papa Khan is aware of just how far his people have fallen, and the NCR bears the full weight of his wrath. He has even accepted envoys from Caesar in the hope that joining the Legion will allow him some final act of revenge against the NCR in the coming war. A fool's hope, but that might be all that the once great Khans have left. They have little choice but to hide in their canyon, lamenting their lost power. Still, even a group of broken-down chem dealers have it pretty good when compared to some people in the wasteland, if you can call them people. There are wretches out there who'd be happy just to have skin that isn't rotting off their faces, but that is a story for another day. You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story.
Up next, we've got a public service announcement. Listen up, children, this stuff's important.
Hi, kids. I'm here today with an important public service announcement.
We
Being
eat
a ghoul
canned
has lots
meat
of
and
advantages,
loot everything that
like
isn't
living
there.
for hundreds of years and being immune to radiation.
You also forgot the perk that we will over encumber all the time. Over encumbered from all of the hoarder. From all of the items that we hoard.
But life as a ghoul ain't for everyone. So, if you're still a smooth skin and you want to stay that way, keep an eye on your Geiger counter when you're outside, and always use Rad-X before scavenging near radioactive materials. If you begin to experience nausea, dry eyes, or spontaneous hair loss, then go inside immediately and inject yourself with Radway. And don't forget to tune in to Galaxy News Radio for adventures of me, Argyle, and my smooth-skinned pal, Herbert Barry Bashwood. New episodes every other Friday, only on GNR.
The radiant heat of an atomic bomb can turn a human body to ash in an instant. The shockwave can crush bones and burst organs for miles in every direction. And those unfortunate enough to survive will soon succumb to the unseen threat of radioactive fallout. Most bodies will lay down and die once they've absorbed enough radiation. A horrible death that takes days, but may be better than the alternative that some people face: ghoulification. Plenty of people in the wasteland will shoot ghouls on sight. They look like zombies or mummies, monsters right out of old horror vids. The tragedy is that most ghouls are just as intelligent now as they were back when they were human. They're perfectly aware of what's happened to them. There's still plenty of them that have gone feral, though. Spend enough time in a rotting body, and they degenerate into little more than animals that attack any human they see. Most folk think it's better to just shoot first and worry about being called a bigot later. We're not sure why some people turn into ghouls, while others just keel over after being exposed to radiation. The history tapes don't mention ghouls existing before the Great War, so something must have changed back around the end of the 21st century. Well, a lot of things changed, but even the best minds of the wasteland can't figure out which factor causes ghoulification. The planet was covered with unprecedented levels of radiation. Some of the sites holding stockpiles of forced evolutionary virus were hit in the war, and trace amounts of the virus were released into the atmosphere.
Washburn is the biggest grifter in Fallout New Vegas. Is that a recommendation? I will watch it later.
Humanity's gene pool had also been reduced from billions of people down to a smattering of survivors, many of which had been selected by Vault Tech for dubious purposes. Ghoulification might happen when folks get just the right dose of radiation. Could even be a hereditary trait that was always present in humanity, but only activated by high levels of radiation exposure. Walk the wasteland long enough, and you'll find evidence for all these theories and more. When the Great War happened, thousands of people made it to Vault Tech facilities in time to survive the nuclear bombardment. Most of them were kept safe from the ensuing fallout. There is one vault, number 12, where the doors didn't close all the way. They shielded most of the radioactivity, but just enough got through to
Is nobody a dog person or cat person? I'm more like a cat person, but I like dog too.
turn Vault 12's population into ghouls. Every one of them was chosen by Vault Tech. They have a history of rigging their vaults to experience theatrical malfunctions, so it can't be a coincidence that the doors failed to seal up. This supports the notion that ghouls have a pre-existing dormant trait, but it could also mean that the scamps at Vault Tech knew the exact amount of radiation to let in. Either way, the ghouls who lived in Vault 12 used their pre-war technology to create a prosperous, if unsightly, town. Humans stayed away from the place, though naming the town Necropolis probably didn't help with tourism. The ghouls got along pretty well by themselves for close to a century. One of the few good parts about a ghoul is they don't age like humans do. Some of the pre-war...
Then why did you fight with the cat in Fallout 4? Because they're little demons. I like them, but they're fucking demons. Okay, you understand me, right? You like them, they are cute, but they are goddamn demons, little demons.
War ghouls are still kicking today. Unfortunately, most of them were killed a while back, because Necropolis was one of the first places to be overrun when the Master unleashed his mutant army. The mutants stormed in, hoping to find a vault full of pure strain humans with no trace of mutation. They must have been hopping mad to learn that all that was left of Vault 12's gene pool was a bunch of radioactive zombies. The ghouls managed to keep an uneasy truce with the super mutants for a couple of years, but eventually the mutants turned on them and slaughtered most of the town. It was nearly 100 years after the Great War, but the folks from Vault 12 finally made it into their graves. Some of the surviving ghouls made it to the few settlements that would tolerate their kind, like Broken Hills, where they lived with humans and mutants alike. Others just set up shop in places too heavily irradiated for anyone to bother them. Another perk of being a ghoul is that they don't get sick from radiation exposure. Hell, some of them even feed off the stuff and get a robust, healthy glow when they're around it. A few of them settled in a town around near a broke-down nuclear reactor in California. They got it running again, even though it probably wasn't up to its pre-war safety standards. They were smart enough to trade their electricity with the surrounding cities, too. They had the idea that if they could provide enough power to their neighbors in Vault City, then they might be able to use some of that Vault Tech
just
medical
like the
equipment
bird
to find a cure
or
for
cameras
being a ghoul.
flying in you.
Nothing ever
for
came
this
of that
institute.
idea, though. Vault City wasn't known for helping out their neighbors.
Yeah, I think someone say in the comment that cat, Ash, the cat from the girl, the vote girl, is the sin. They killed the cat. They found a sin component in it. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. Someone comment that.
Back in those days. A few scientists are still looking for a cure, including a ghoul doctor in Washington, D.C., but there aren't any tales of ghouls being miraculously renewed. Plenty of hucksters are looking to trick them into thinking there's a cure, or a better world waiting for them in the sky. Not far from the Colorado River is a glowing preacher who claims he's going to take his flock of faithful ghouls to some sort of utopian space paradise. That is, they can get their spaceship repaired. Back in the town of Gecko, they had some mysterious genius hidden away beneath the town with a plan to renew their humanity somehow. They should have been a little suspicious, since the cunning plan involved gathering large amounts of cheese-flavored snacks. Large ghoul settlements are rare these days, because many factions within the wasteland have tried to annihilate them entirely. The Enclave has attempted genocide twice in the last 40 years, and the Brotherhood of Steel isn't exactly sympathetic to their plight either. There's a secret ghoul city built into an old museum out in Washington, D.C. They have a lady who remembers the days before the bombs fell. She tries to help out the unfortunate people who have recently transformed.
Cats exiting to votes in the subway. After all, cat eats anything and they can hunt things bigger than them, so they would 100% be good at eliminating that roach infestation.
Yeah, people are still turning into ghouls. Doesn't happen often, but every now and then some lucky bastard will spend too much time near a hotspot, find themselves slowly turning into a walking hunk of beef jerky. A person can never tell if they'll ghoulify. Even if they stay away from radiation, they can still end up looking a ghoul if they get exposed to the forced evolutionary virus, the stuff that created the super mutants. Normally, when someone is dipped in a vat of FEV, they come out looking Boris Karloff with a touch of seasickness. There's a few mutants who developed other forms of genetic aberration. Holotapes recovered from the Master's old base in Maryland.
Interestingly enough, Hancock and Eddie Winter from Photo 4 are examples of humans becoming ghouls by artificial drugs. Wait, really? Really? I don't remember Hancock's story that much. Ghouls are not immortals. There is a whole quest line in Photo 1 of ghouls needing you to help them to get their water pump working again so they won't die. They do still need water and food. Yeah, I figured.
Raposa speak of people who gain psychic powers and other unique alterations. A couple of these failed attempts at perfecting the super mutants ended up looking just like ghouls. One of them used to live out in the boneyard to the west, joined up with the followers of the apocalypse over a century ago.
Tim Kane, the creator of Fallout, said ghoulification is random and unpredictable, so it's basically a gamble if you turn into a ghoul or not from radiations. Isn't there in the Fallout New Vegas, there's a random rider girl who worked in the radiation hold and she wants to become a ghoul, and she said life is the what did he say? I don't remember what she says, but
ago. Their records say he was an ordinary human before he was dipped in the FEV vats. He was pure strain human too, fresh out of one of the vaults, and he still came out of the vats looking like a brain eater. He might still be alive out there too, if his mutation gave him the same long lifespan of the other mutants. There's another old mutant who emerged from the vats looking just like a ghoul. He was a survivor of the Great War and was the first mutant to walk the wasteland, or at least that's how he tells the story. He calls himself Harold, and he claims that he had a hand in just about everything that happened over the last 200 years.
Really?
He survived the Great War inside one of the nicer vaults, and used to know the super mutant master back when the master was just an ordinary human. Also
Really?
claims he was good friends with the Vault Dweller who defeated the super mutant army a century ago. Funny that Harold isn't mentioned in the Vault Dweller's own memoir. Harold even said that he helped the Chosen One bring down the Enclave when they tried to take over California. That might have happened. Plenty of people remember both of them being in the town of Gecko at the time. But Harold's got a fuzzy memory, so take his stories with a grain of salt. Being over 200 years old will make a body go a little senile, and Harold's got some unusual problems with his brain on top of old age. It started out as a little twig growing out
Not
of his head.
you,
100 years ago.
Jesus.
Some side effect of his mutation.
Not you
Over the
too.
decades, that little branch just kept
Oh, damn
growing
it.
and growing until Harold ended up more tree than man. He wandered the country for years at his own deliberate pace.
This is what I
Then he
agree.
took root out to
This
find
is a
wisdom.
spoiler.
The build enjoys the skies north of we do to think that old.
We go
A
to
special thanks to our sponsors.
Ulysses. Let's go. I hope the remaster for the 3 and New Vegas add more body horror mutants apart from Centaurs and the abomination that was cut in Photo 4. Yeah, I hope that's so. Photo 4 design was so tame. They were so tame. I still remember the first time I see the Centaur in New Vegas. Holy shit. That shit was so terrifying. There also Moira Brown in 3, but he instantly become a ghoul. Guys, so who doesn't know yet, please don't spoil about Photo 3 because I haven't played it yet, but I am intend to play it in the future, so please don't spoil it for me.
Experience the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get to the heart of the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
Ulysses Divide.
There were some mighty inhospitable places in this world even before the war. Deserts that could sear the life from a man as fast as any radioactive crater. Rivers so polluted they'd catch fire. And lawless lands ruled by brutal fanatics. It was a bad enough place that some people
The storyteller cause spoil a lot of Photo 3. If it happened to mention about Photo 3, I will skip it. And you guys should if you guys see anything related to Photo 3, you guys should warn me first. I will skip it, so don't worry about that much.
even
Don't
look
worry, don't
forward to
worry.
the apocalypse. A chance for humanity to start over and build a new society that was worthy of its people's loyalty. There are some folk who are proud to wear the flags of the new societies that have appeared in the aftermath. The Brotherhood, the Enclave, New California Republic, even some slaves in the Legion who are proud of the bull symbol embroidered on their clothes. But the flags of the old world are still out there for travelers who care to look. The red, white, and blue and the stars and stripes appear all over the Mojave. They're a code, a message for someone. Can't say who they're for, but the man who made the marks isn't shy about making his presence known. He traveled through the Mojave as a messenger of the Mojave Express out of Prim, concealing his role as one of Caesar's frumentari. He calls himself Ulysses. That's a name from the old Roman times, and one that belonged to a general who fought in one of America's most bitter wars. The Mojave's Ulysses named himself after this general, a hero who united two nations under a single flag. America's flag on his back is a symbol of that dedication. Ulysses is a man who respects symbols. He spent his life trying to find one that he could be proud to wear.
Wait, let me read the chat. My only wish for Photo 3 New Vegas is that they add more horror and guns in the game. Also, I want more stylish guns that fit the game but inspired by Cold War weapons, but make the energy weapons feel sci-fi. I hope that's so. I hope that too. Okay.
Began with the tribe he was born into, the Twisted Hares. They wore their hair in braids to symbolize their life and achievements, and Ulysses has honored that tradition throughout his life, even after the tribe was assimilated by Caesar's legion. He's a loyal man too, and that is both a virtue and a curse in the wasteland. Despite seeing his tribe betrayed and enslaved by Caesar, Ulysses still remained loyal to the legion. Give that man a cause, and he'll fight under its flag. He carried the symbol of the bull with him throughout Nevada and was the first in the Legion to discover Hoover Dam, where he spotted the Rangers from the new California Republic. The Rangers had their own flag. Their totem was the two-headed bear of the NCR. These were men who shared his respect for symbols, and Ulysses knew that the bull and bear would battle to the death over that dam. He didn't fight in the battle for Hoover Dam himself. Caesar had sent him further west to cut the NCR supply lines. Interstate 15 used to be a highway where cars and trucks rolled at speeds faster than a Deathclaw and jet. 2 centuries after the war, it was known as the Long 15, and it saw its fair share of traffic with Brahmin carts bringing food and ammunition to NCR soldiers. The road served as a jugular vein for the bear's 2 heads. Shortly before the NCR clashed with the Legion at the dam, Ulysses was out by the Long 15 in a town called Hopeville. That's the sort of name they like to give places back before the war. Putting the word hope in the name didn't save the place when the Great War struck, though. Got hit pretty bad, and it took years before folks started settling back in. Seems there was a courier who frequented that route on trips between California and the Mojave. Funny that Ulysses and this other courier could walk the same road for years and never meet face to face. That other courier helped build up Hopeville, a neighboring town of Ashton. The place was looking mighty promising a few years ago, thanks to the work of that one courier. Ulysses saw the symbols of the old world in that restored community. He realized that the stars and stripes had the potential to be greater than the bear and bull combined. Hopeville and Ashton could have been a new home for him, free of the war between the Legion and NCR. The starting point for a nation that was worthy of his loyalty. But hidden away under those towns was a secret. No one knew that back before the war, they were actually used to hide missile silos. Those atomic warheads that slept nice and quiet for 200 years, like mythological beasts from a primeval past. Whatever old-world talisman was supposed to wake them for the Great War never arrived. Well, it didn't arrive until a couple of years ago. Without warning, the missiles started launching and exploding right under the towns. It was the second time Armageddon, and it ripped the land open, torn the streets.
The Long 15 is a drive to real world in the state of R or I-55 highway that run through the area in the US. Yeah.
Filled the ground
I know
with
that's a
invisible
reference
radioactive
in real
fire
life.
and set up dust storms that could skin a man alive. Why did they suddenly detonate after all that time? The only person who made it out of there was Ulysses, and whatever he knew about it, he's kept to himself so far. Even though he escaped, there are still some souls living in the ruins of Hopeville. The NCR soldiers and Legion troops who were fighting over the place when the warheads blew are trapped there now. The radiation changed them, mutated them into something akin to the ghouls we have in the rest of the wasteland. The harsh sandstorms flayed them alive, but their mutation kept them going even when their skin scoured off. Their red, exposed flesh marks them as the unfortunates who survived a second apocalypse. Their rage unites them against anyone who enters their land. Their identities as NCR or Legion are gone. The only vestige of those former lives are the scraps of old uniforms they wear. Luckily, they grow weak when they stray from the radioactive soil of this place they call the Divide now. Few people have laid eyes on them, except for a couple of couriers and a foolhardy storyteller in rusty power armor. Ulysses managed to escape with his hide intact because of the automated medical technology in the Divide. The place was full of robots, including those little floating iBots that the Enclave used to have out east. There must have been pre-war machinery in the Divide that could duplicate the iBots and modify them to do the work of autodocs. After climbing out of the ruins of the Divide, Ulysses was still loyal to Caesar for a time. Before he took his final trip back to the Divide, he was sent by the Bull to the Great Salt Lake in Utah. There he manipulated the Whitelegs tribe into doing Caesar's will. He would inflict the same fate that had befallen his own tribe onto the Whitelegs, all to kill one man. Joshua Graham was one of the few men that Caesar feared had allied himself with another tribe in the area. So Ulysses taught the Whitelegs how to wage war with Roman brutality and 21st century weapons. The Whitelegs were unaware that their alliance with the Legion would eventually be their undoing, and they hailed Ulysses as a hero and honored him by mimicking his braided hair. They still wear it that way today, unaware that he considered it to be a mockery of his dead kinsmen, the Twisted Hairs. His days of meddling with the tribals of Utah might have been the breaking point of his loyalty to the Legion. Not long after that, he took to wandering the wasteland pursuing his own goals. He set about destroying the new America that seemed hell-bent on repeating the mistakes of the old. He knew that a weather station in a place called the Big Empty was connected to the sandstorms in the Divide, so he trekked into the deepest parts of the wasteland to find it. There he braved the roving bands of lobotomized slaves and attacked robots to restore the Divide, and maybe the spirit of America too. He left his marks while he was there, but he didn't leave many more after that. His travels must have taken him all over the Mojave and beyond, but all we know is that he was in the town of Primm recently. The logbooks at the Mojave Express office there show that he was hired to take something important to the New Vegas Strip, but he turned down the job. Some other courier took the package, whatever it was. After that, Ulysses disappeared back into the Divide. He left a series of messages behind him as he went, most of them addressed to another courier, Courier 6. Maybe that's the same courier who used to travel through the Divide years ago, or the courier who took that last job at the Mojave Express. Whoever it is, Ulysses was calling them to the Divide for some reason. Maybe someone answered that call already. A mushroom cloud went up over the sky near Hopeville a while ago. Could have been Ulysses settling a score with that courier, although he'd have to have one hell of a grudge if it involved nuking that town for the third time. Ulysses has seen his tribe destroyed, his new home shattered, and loyalty spurned. He turned to the old world when the new one failed him. He's a man who could make any spot in the wasteland his home, but he chose to stay in the Divide because of what it symbolized for him. Lately, there's been a person out there in the ruins above Hopeville, keeping a lonely vigil over the broken land, has the lean body of a messenger, and wears the flag of the old world on their back. It might be that other courier wearing a duster like the one that Ulysses used to wear. Or it might be Ulysses himself. After years of living only for his hate, he might have made peace with himself and the courier. The wasteland has enough problems already, and lots of folk would find it comforting to think that Ulysses has come to the end of his journey, delivered his final message, and is content to stand guard over one place for a while. Ulysses was one of the greatest assets the Legion had, but even he was far from the deadliest. But that is a story for another day.
X will be great.
A special thanks to our sponsors. You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way.
Caesar Legate.
Walk the wasteland long enough and anyone will gather a few scars. Gecko bites, laser burns, scorpion stings. Little scars make for nice talk at parties, but some scars are so deep, so big, that they end up defining a person for the rest of their lives. You see a man burned head to toe and he keeps on walking, or someone with their face torn off who refuses to lie down and die. That's a person who has more important things to do than tell you their story over a bottle of Nuka-Cola. When Caesar and his legion came upon the Hoover Dam in 2277, he knew that it was his destiny to march his army across the Colorado River, just as the first Caesar had crossed another river 2,000 years before. Unlike the original Caesar, this new Caesar found himself facing a foe that would not yield at the mere sight of an approaching army. The new California Republic was just as determined to hold that dam as the Legion was to take it. When the battle came, Caesar's legate made several mistakes in the command of his forces. A combination of overzealousness and righteousness made the Legion an easy victim for a trap laid by the NCR, and the resulting debacle put an end to the Legion's march west. Now they wait on the far bank of the Colorado River, rebuilding their army with fresh slaves taken from the fiercest tribes east of the dam, looking for a way to send the NCR running in earnest terror. The man who led them to their catastrophic defeat had been Caesar's first general. At the time, he went by the title Malpais Legate, but he was once known as Joshua Graham, one of Caesar's oldest friends. Like all men, Caesar feared the unknown and placed his trust in the people he knew best. Malpais Legate might have been the person best qualified to lead the assault and simply fell victim to a cunning ploy by the NCR commanders. Or maybe Caesar was unable to see the limits in his old friend's abilities and should have led the charge himself. Either way, Malpais was punished for his failure in the worst way the Legion could find. Burned alive and thrown into the Grand Canyon. Even if Graham managed to survive, he'd be disfigured and in agony for the rest of his life. The next time that the Legion sets out to take that dam, they'll need a new legate in command of their army. They'll need someone who can stir genuine fear in the hearts of the NCR troops, and they already have the perfect candidate. Joshua Graham ended his career with defeat and disfigurement, but his replacement joined the Legion through the same path. Radiation, mutation, cybernetics, these can all create monsters, but the one they call the Monster of the East is just a man. He was not created by science, but by rage. Like all those who were assimilated into the Legion, he once went by another name, although that name is lost to history. He was the greatest warrior of the Hydebark tribe to the east. His brute strength and massive size put him on the path of the warrior at a young age. By the time he was an adult, he'd become the most feared man in his tribe. He was their defender, and the neighboring tribes learned to avoid Hydebark territory. When the Legion first arrived, they quickly discovered that any soldier who entered Hydebark lands would be slaughtered by a giant swordsman who left behind a trail of bodies cleaved by a massive blade. The Legion named this unseen terror Lanius, the Latin word for butcher. There are very few tales of the Hydebarks that do not center around Lanius, a clan of savages whose only remarkable feat is that they survived for 200 years after the bombs fell. As Lanius grew to manhood, the tribe in turn grew to depend on him too much. With such a terrifying champion to fight their battles for them, the Hydebarks became soft and weak over time. Their chieftains needed neither wisdom nor might to flourish, so long as Lanius was there to protect them. When the Legion arrived looking for new tribes to enslave, the chieftain of the Hydebarks feared that this was a threat even Lanius could not defeat. The tribesmen chose to surrender to Caesar rather than face death in battle. It was a weakling's gamble that gained them nothing. Although Caesar accepted their surrender, Lanius considered it a betrayal that the leaders of his tribe would prefer the many deaths of a coward over a single valiant moment on the battlefield. He killed them himself as the Legion watched. Although Lanius was capable of bringing down 16 men single-handedly, he barely survived. His strength impressed Caesar. He was offered a place of honor in the Legion. With his respect for his own tribe gone, he accepted on the condition that he be allowed to exterminate the remaining warriors of the Hydebarks. The history and identity of the clan has been erased by the Legion. They are now known only as one of 86 tribes that were united by Caesar. A footnote in a scroll lying at the bottom of a chest in Caesar's tent. The women of the Hydebarks have been scattered throughout the Legion as slaves, and the boys are now grown into soldiers of the Legion. The men of the Hydebark clan? Only one remains, Lanius, the Monster of the East. Lanius has no love for the Legion. They employ deceit and trickery when assimilating new tribes, and Lanius is a man of very direct methods. He is loyal to Caesar himself, though, and values the opportunity to prove his honor with each new tribe that he conquers in Caesar's name. Since he joined the Legion, he's led them to victories against 19 other tribes. The NCR would be fools to think that Lanius won't lead the charge at the next battle for Hoover Dam. Lanius wears a suit of armor crafted by the finest blacksmiths in Caesar's army. It isn't powered by a microfusion pack like the Brotherhood's power armor. No, Lanius carries the full weight of that metal himself. No hydraulics, no gadgets, just a man fueled by a lust for battle. He wields the blade of the East. A few of the super mutants took to tearing the bumpers off pre-war cars and hammering them into sword blades. That's fine for a giant gray beast hopped up on Stealth Boy rad. But a man like Lanius needs a more refined weapon. The Legion forged for him a massive sword with old-world craftsmanship that is every bit as devastating as modern tech, when in the right hands. Lanius can cut an armored ranger in half with one blow, and knock a super mutant right off its feet. Legion Fermentari even claim that he can run it straight through a Brotherhood of Steel paladin in full power armor. When Lanius killed the leaders of his tribe, his face was disfigured in the fight, or at least that's what some in the Legion say. He never appears without his helmet, and his personal servants are all blind, so there's no telling what the Legion is hiding behind the mask. That, of course, is Caesar's goal, to make his new general an enigma. Something made all the more fearsome by the mere fact that it is unseen. On very rare occasions, people will escape the Legion, and there are a few former members who have seen Lanius in person and are willing to speak of him openly. A former Frumentari named Ulysses will talk about Lanius to those who have earned the honor of conversing with him. Maybe he's a little overly optimistic, but he thinks that the monster of the East can be reasoned with, that the next battle between East and West could end with Lanius peacefully parting ways with the NCR's envoy. An unlikely scenario, unless the NCR can find a very persuasive representative. Ulysses also met Joshua Graham. Against all odds, Graham was resilient enough to survive being set on fire and thrown into the Grand Canyon. After crawling out of the canyon, he traveled east to Utah and lived among the people of his homeland, New Canaan. They were a people of faith, still worshipped one of the old world gods from before the war, and their ancestors kept that faith alive. Among the New Canaanites, he began the process of atoning for the atrocities he committed as Malpais Legate. They helped Graham recover from his injuries, and his sins were absolved in their eyes, although he would forever bear his burn scars. He might have been content to stay there for the rest of his life, living in peace, but rumors of the burned man reached back to Caesar, and he couldn't rest knowing that a potentially dangerous enemy was still kicking. The New Canaanites were soon wiped out by a band of tribals called the Whitelegs. Ulysses had a hand in that, back when he was still working for the Legion. Neither man seems to hold a grudge over the incident, although it's probably best to keep clear if they ever meet again. The Whitelegs had been sent by the Legion to kill Graham, but that man has a fire burning inside him that just won't go out. Again he survived, and the burned man now lives among the tribals in Zion Canyon. There tries to use his knowledge of war to bring peace among the tribes, a well-intended effort, but a reminder of his old life as a ruthless killer. The monster of the East and the burned man.
It's funny if we choose to side with Graham and will not convince him to spare the Whitelegs leader, he will just become another Caesar. He literally just become another Caesar. A little less ruthless, but still another Caesar. Joshua say the armor Graham wears in the slideshow at the start of Honest Heart shouldn't what he still wears when you met him. This was a few years ago. Oh, interesting. But
man are alike in many ways. Myths that outshine the men beneath their masks. Both are forever scarred by their association with Caesar. Yet Graham has learned to wear his scars with humility, a constant reminder of the monster that he was, while Lanius is unable to see the monster that he has become. Until he does, he will remain a valuable tool for Caesar and a force of destruction in the wasteland. The Legion was built by men of ambition, but their origins were that of humility and service. It's hard to believe the Legion's founders had their start in an organization that works tirelessly to preserve light and knowledge in a world that is savage by nature. But that is a story for another day. A special thanks to our sponsors.
Old-time religion.
You've experienced the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well, to get to the heart of the story,
Imagine a world where the only limits are that of your imagination. A world where science meets religion, where technology and spirituality go hand in hand. Scientific Spirituality by Dick Hubble gives you a new look at today's problems. Order your copy of Scientific Spirituality today, or visit your local Hubology mission for a free Zeta scan. Hubology. There is a higher plane of existence.
Yeah.
before the war, people prayed to all sorts of gods. Most of those old religions didn't survive the war. No time to memorize scripture or recite prayers when every minute of the day is spent scavenging for food. Nowadays, every bombed-out town in the wasteland has the remains of an old church in it, but most of them are empty, save for the radroaches and feral ghouls. If the old world gods are coming back, they sure are taking their time with it. In the meantime, the more superstitious folks in the wasteland have been making up their own religions to help them get through the day. There's a group of kooks out east who worship a nuclear bomb that's right in the center of their town. The thing was a dud that didn't go off during the Great War back in 2077. It's been sitting there ever since. Some of the locals must have thought it was divine intervention that prevented it from exploding, and this holy relic has been spreading thyroid cancer to the faithful ever since. These children of Adam have been in that town since its construction. Their obsession with atomic energy means that they know a lot about engineering, so the townsfolk put up with them. They have a preacher who stands in the radioactive mud telling anyone who will listen about the glory of Adam and the holy glow that awaits folk who die of radiation poisoning. The children of Adam split into another group that hunkers down in a basement one town over. They aren't so much concerned with the bombs as they are with the effects of radiation on certain people. These apostles of the holy light think that ghouls are lucky souls who've absorbed enough of Adam's love to evolve beyond humanity. A comforting thought for the handful of ghouls who cram into their tiny sanctuary during services, but the church doesn't have a lot of people begging to convert. There was a town round the 2240s that was convinced they had a rat god living in their sewers. The townsfolk didn't worship the thing, but it seemed like the local mole rat population had taken a shine to it. The rodents organized somehow and chased the humans out of part of the town for a while. Some adventurous types killed that king rat a long time ago, putting an end to the whole cult, but that wasn't the only rodent god worshipped in the wasteland. Some ghouls over in the town of Gecko had a mysterious preacher deep beneath the town. Turned out to be one mighty articulate vermin with some fancy plans. Promised the ghouls all that their humanity would be renewed through some supernatural force. Nothing ever came of it, but ghouls don't grow old, so the original cultists might still be there praying away and hoping for the best. Then there is this old cult, known as the Children of the Cathedral, and was perceived since its foundation in 2156 as little more than superstitious, harmless nonsense. Tolerated by the wasteland, they set up hospitals throughout survivor communities. The imposing cathedral in the boneyard was their center of power, covering up their sinister plans.
Oh, is this a cult? Created by the masters? That worship the masters?
Their dark god was the master of the supermutants, the holy flame dwelling beneath the ground in the darkness. Most people had never encountered anything like him. Useful mutations are rare, and among his many uncommon mutations was a powerful form of telepathy. Go on and laugh, but the files at the Mariposa military base confirm that the Master and several other people developed psychic powers after being exposed to the forced evolutionary virus. The Master was lucky in a sense. His evolved state allowed him to use his powers without going too insane. The cult worshipped his hideous visage, some following out of greed, others out of sincere belief, strengthened by brainwashing, self-torture, and other indoctrination. They did his bidding blindly and spread out through the wasteland, their hospitals stocked with weapons and spies to infiltrate survivor settlements and pave the way for their armies. Like it or not, there are some goings-on in the wasteland so terrifying that they'll turn a body to prayer. In Maryland, there's a building that scavengers have stayed away from over the centuries. On moonless nights, the surrounding lands have shadowy forms that crawl about shrieking the words Al-Hazred, words a human mouth was not meant to speak. Those who ventured inside claim to have witnessed dark rituals on an unholy altar, seen the dead rise and unnameable horrors appear through fetid mists. Sounds like a bunch of ghouls having a party, but that old office building is still one of the most bizarre places the wasteland holds.
The one good Morat being Snuffle? I wonder what the thing with Snuffle. If he was just a random Morat, or he has some reference that I don't know.
Whatever eldritch rites those ghouls practice is certainly from the old world, maybe even older than mankind. A handful of other pre-war cults proved to be tougher than roaches, too. Not even the apocalypse could get rid of something called Hubology. Even before the war, most people knew that Hubology was a load of bunk. It was made up by a fellow named Dick Hubble to bamboozle people out of their caps. Claimed that the spirits of dead aliens were the cause of everyone's problems, or some such nonsense. Of course, the Hubologists would clear out these invisible neurodynes for a price. They were still running the same racket out in Frisco for centuries after the Great War. One of the few old-time religions to stick around this long is something they called Mormonism. Mighty popular in the Mojave before the war, and it had a pretty good run after the apocalypse too, until they drew the attention of Caesar's legion. Now there's fewer of them than ever. That religion isn't likely to die out though. The remaining Mormons are resilient to say the least, and they carry more than scripture these days. There's an old Mormon fort over in New Vegas, but there's no Mormons there anymore. It's a base for the followers of the apocalypse. With all of these groups and their fancy names, it would be easy to think that the followers of the apocalypse are some sort of doomsday cult. But despite the name, they aren't a religious group. They aren't trying to create another apocalypse. They're trying to heal the world in the wake of the last one. The followers were founded out west in New California a few generations after the Great War. First founded on the outskirts of San Diego, which you call Dayglow now, the followers migrated and settled into an old world library, out in the boneyard. Led by Nicole, they realized just how much of humanity's knowledge had been lost in the decades since the war. Instead of hoarding that knowledge, they decided to share it, to ensure that the Great War would not happen again. Nicole and her followers even had a hand in helping the Vault Dweller infiltrate the Master's Cathedral, and the organization lives on today. The followers have a few things in common with the Brotherhood of Steel. Both like to dig up pre-war tech, but the Brotherhood is mostly interested in weapons. They refuse to share their technology with outsiders. The followers are more concerned with how pre-war society grew their food, generated their energy, and healed the sick. Unearthing the weapons that caused Armageddon isn't part of their plan for the wasteland. They'd rather see some of the secrets of the old world remain buried, and that puts them at odds against some of the other factions of the wasteland. The followers have a complicated relationship with the new California Republic. The NCR knows that the followers can be useful allies in the arms race against the Brotherhood and the Legion, but the pacifist nature of the followers means that they are at odds with the NCR's expansionism. They have since split ways, with NCR supporting a more pliable, agreeable group of dissident followers, the Office of Science and Industry. Of course, as pacifists, they would never be tolerated by the Legion. Caesar himself was raised by the followers, taken in when he was just a child, but their teaching obviously didn't stick. Back when Caesar was a young scribe working for the followers, he soaked up all that he could learn from them, then turned that knowledge toward a path that would horrify Nicole and the other founders of the group. The followers are still very accepting of outsiders, though. People who value education and are willing to use their knowledge to ease the suffering of the world are always welcomed. There's even an individual among them who's descended from the surviving members of the Enclave, and it seems he uses the followers as a path to redemption for the sins of his father. That's a long...
A public casting call for extra in the show mentioned Mormon. A sign of the new Canaanites will be featured. It's nice. I'm looking forward to it.
road to walk, and a precarious position for a man to be in, torn between loyalty to a monstrous lineage and an idealistic quest for absolution. The followers are doing their best to carry the fire of humanity with them as they aid the most unfortunate people in a world of suffering. They prove that what a person does is more important than what they believe. Very few of the followers could think that they're heading to a place of everlasting peace after they die. Like most folk in the wasteland, all they're hoping for is a quick death and the satisfaction of knowing they made the world slightly less horrific.
I like the
know
followers.
that knowledge of the old world has its uses. Those pre-war types sure knew how to grow food and build houses. Although there are some who take the pursuit of knowledge a little too seriously. The unbridled Poindexters who designed the weapons that got the world into this mess in the first place. Some of those smarty-pants old world folk are still with us today. Found a drastic method of keeping up their research for a couple more centuries. They have a private facility out in the middle of nowhere, filled with lobotomized zombie soldiers, giant robot scorpions, and teddy bears. But that is a story for another day.
We will head to the big mountain. And this will be the last episode that I will react today. This will be the last episode. And we will continue this series in the next Saturday. Okay?
Experience the Fallout series in your own way, but want to learn more about its story. Well,
Okay. The think tank.
The dog is man's best friend, and the gun is his other best friend. But what if someday man could experience the love of a loyal hound and the happiness of a warm gun simultaneously? That day is at hand, thanks to the power
That
of
sounds so
science.
fucked up.
America's greatest minds have collaborated on the Fluid Intelligence Dog Ordinance, FIDO, a miracle of ballistic zoology that combines floppy-eared alertness with the stopping power of a .44 Magnum. Take that, commie spies. Take that, bullies. Take that, Richie Marcus.
Richie Marcus? Who's that? That sounds familiar.
the great minds of the 21st century created fantastic technology that their ancestors couldn't even imagine. They shot machines into space, built robots too small to see, and harnessed the power of the atom. They also made all of the horrors that ruined the world, and many of those scientific horrors still plague us today. Forced evolutionary virus, nuclear warheads, orbital weapon platforms. It's chilling to think that the minds who created such things might still be out there, but they are, still thinking up new ways to kill, torture, and mutilate. About 350 years ago, America was celebrating a war that they won by using the first atomic bombs. The whole country was inspired by the potential that atomic energy promised. They dreamed of a future where atomic rocket ships flew through the sky, atomic cars.
What did I miss? Took a shower and brewed some iced coffee. You missed about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 6 to 7 episodes of the Storytellers. Not much. Fallout is missing one thing: RoboCats. Wasn't they evil enough? You want a robot cat? Double the evil?
Raced through the streets, and giant robots defended America's shores with atomic death rays. At first, that view of the future only appeared in movies, the old two-dimensional holotapes of the 20th century. But by the middle of the 21st century, the future had arrived, and it looked exactly how America thought it would. What had once been science fiction had become science fact. The wasteland holds monuments to some of the people who brought about that future. The Robco factory still stands, as does the old Chrysler factory, Poseidon energy reactors, and of course, Vault-Tec vaults. The big boys all built their facilities to last, but some of America's greatest pre-war minds engaged in secret work that was best kept out of the public eye. These masters of the ethical paradigm shift called themselves the think tank. This group of eggheads engaged in the sort of radical, theatrical, impossible science that was once the stuff of comic books. They concealed their laboratories deep within a complex called Big Mountain, where their innumerable
Boris
crimes against
during
humanity
his
and
day at
nature were
American
hidden beneath
High.
miles of stone. There they constructed facilities to research.
Wait. Dr. Boreas is the one getting bullied, right? Not the other way around, right? The 67 virus? What is that? Is that some reference that I didn't understand?
New ways to fight America's wars. Titanic robot scorpions with laser stingers. Cybernetic enhancements for man and beast. New stealth suit technology that was surprisingly talkative for a stealth suit. Innovative new toxins to kill foreign soldiers by the thousands. Every day at Big Mountain was like a science fiction double feature. No, a triple feature. Their work wasn't theoretical, it was applied science. Applied with extreme prejudice. Big Mountain maintained its own prison camp, where imprisoned Chinese and Chinese Americans were kept as human test subjects. DNA splicing, automated lobotomy machines, and old-fashioned target practice for newfangled guns were just a few of the indignities forced on the unfortunate prisoners. The exploding collars that modern slavers use were widely used in the camp at Big Mountain. There are even a few of those old prisoners.
Love the old world blue DLC, cause it delves into the sci-fi aspect of Fallout that people tend to forget. Fallout is a sci-fi, not just apocalyptic game with Cold War tech. Yeah. A lot of people love this DLC. I like that too.
Prisoners still alive in that camp today turned into ghouls when the bombs fell 200 years ago, and they have spent the centuries trapped at Big Mountain by their slave collars. A horrid fate, even for suspected commies. When there weren't enough communist prisoners for their experiments, the think tank
67 is the meme nothing to do with Fallout? Not no one knew about the meme. No, I don't know about that meme.
had no problem using unsuspecting American citizens. They distributed their technologies around the country to military towns like Hopeville. In one instance, they even provided a resort town with fabulous devices like holograms, self-sustaining vending machines, and the most advanced auto docks in the wasteland. But the think tank took its pound of flesh. The experimental technology turned entire cities into proving grounds, often with disastrous results. The sandstorms over the divide are courtesy of the think tank's meddling, as is a peculiar red mist that chokes the life out of anyone who ventures into the wrong part of the wasteland. Most of their attempts to put science to benevolent use ended up going horribly awry. They designed a series of bodysuits to autonomously transport wounded soldiers away from battlefields, but they ended up as ambulatory body bags for the vengeful bones of long-dead men. Even something as harmless as a toaster became a bloodthirsty killing machine once the think tank began experimenting with automated personality modules. Sometime before the Great War, the scientists of the think tank developed a weapon so powerful that it blew the top of their mountain right off. Since then, Big Mountain has been a huge crater that forms a natural barrier between the think tank and the rest of the wasteland. Keeps most folk out, and mercifully keeps the think tank inside. The 6 scientists who ran the place back then survived the Great War inside a massive dome at the heart of the Big Empty. Over the years since, everyone else who inhabited the place has met their end either from radiation or more gruesome means, but those 6 scientists were mighty tenacious about continuing their research for as long as possible. As their bodies aged, they decided to preserve their precious brains in new mechanical bodies. Transferring a living brain into a robot body is a tricky task. These men and women survived the process, but it seems like a few chunks of brain got left behind in their old gourds. The resulting monstrosities became demented parodies of their once brilliant selves. The long-term effects of floating in biomed gel hasn't helped them any either. They go by mysterious code names like Dr. Zero, 8, or Klein. Their original names are lost to them. Maybe a bit of brain damage during their transformation.
Brain
or it might be
damage.
some math nerd's idea of a joke. Klein is some sort of de facto leader, mostly by default, since the others are too incompetent to do much more than break things around their lab, rant about communists, or indulge their remaining biological urges. At some point after they transferred their brains into those floating cases, Klein had a falling out with the Dr. Mobius, and Mobius set up shop in a region of the Big Empty that he calls the Forbidden Zone. From there he pesters the think tank with an army of robot scorpions. It all sounds silly when you're nice and safe out here in the wasteland, but there are people who've been inside the Big Empty and seen firsthand the nightmares within. Just about all of them ended up captured by robots and had their brains scooped out. Normally getting its brain pulled out would spell the end for a body, but the automated surgeons in the Big Empty are programmed to cram in a bunch of electronics and a Tesla coil that keep people scurrying around without their brain. The think tank calls them lobotomites. They're the brainless workforce, keeping the remains of the glorious Big Empty together. Beyond their janitorial duties, they just shamble around growling and attack anyone they see who still has a skull full of gray matter. An energy barrier around the crater prevents the lobotomites from escaping and keeps the think tank trapped inside too. But any creature that still has its brain inside its body can walk right through that barrier. Many of the evils of the Mojave came out of Big Mountain. Those giant poisonous bugs, the Cazadors, were engineered by one of the crackpots in the think tank. That
I
same
don't remember
fellow thought
that
it would be
the
a bright
Cazador
idea to
actually from the
crossbreed a
Big
rattlesnake
Mountain.
with a coyote. The resulting abominations escaped to plague the Mojave.
And the Night
They
Stalker
sneak around
too.
the desert at night, preying on the unwary. Many travelers have died with the sound of a Night Stalker's rattle still echoing around them. There have only been a handful of people who got inside the place and back out with their brains intact. The lure of buried relics from before the war is a powerful temptation for folk who are so enamored of the past that they can't appreciate the wonders that the present holds. The disgraced Brotherhood of Steel elder went there in search of the means to help the Brotherhood defeat the new California Republic. The place was like a bank vault, just waiting for him to crack it open. Elijah's Brotherhood training with the pre-war technology allowed him to easily outmatch the think tank and have the run of the place for a while. He not only found arcane gadgets, but also learned about another hidden treasure trove of pre-war wonders. By the time he broke out of the Big Empty, he had everything he needed to pull off a heist at some legendary city of gold. The think tank is a little eccentric, but they're still dangerous. Elijah was a rare man, an expert in the equipment found around the Big Empty. Others who stumbled across the think tank had a harder time evading them. A man like Elijah drew plenty of attention, and one of the Brotherhood's splinter groups sent out an assassin to stop whatever he was up to. That assassin, she didn't fare as well. Got caught by the think tank, and her brain all poked up by one of their malfunctioning autodocs. She made it out of there eventually, with most of her brain still working. Then she headed off after Elijah again, this time with a better stealth suit and an ever-growing grudge against the man. The only other humans who've set foot in the Big Empty and walked back out.
I hope in remake you can tame wild animals and keep them as pets until they get killed. Imagine an army. Enslave those animals. This sounds like Pokemon. This sounds like Palworld.
Mostly intact are a pair of couriers. One of them wasn't so much concerned with buried technology as he was with speaking to people who were alive back before the war. The think tank might just be brains in jars now, but they were once red-blooded Americans in the days when great nations stretched all the way over the continent. It's hard to find a person who remembers that firsthand. The think tank had 5 of them in one room. To a man trying to reawaken a nation, that's an opportunity worth braving the lobotomites and robo-scorpions. The other courier seems to have stumbled across the place by accident. No grand quest for knowledge, vengeance, or...
That money is a great DLC. My only criticism is how confusing the map is. I got lost all the time. Me too, brother, me too. I got lost over the place, and I have to find where the place I should go. I have to use YouTube guys to actually finish the quest, because I so goddamn lost in that place.
Truth, just bought a ticket to the midnight show of a sci-fi marathon that went on longer than expected. Even though they are just fragments of their former selves, the think tank used to be some of the greatest minds that humanity had to offer. They brought about achievements in science that prove humanity is the most advanced life form on Earth. But Earth is just one small planet in a vast universe, and we are not alone. We have been visited by a malevolent race from beyond the stars who are as far above us as we are above the amoeba. For centuries, they have observed us from afar with envious eyes. But that is a story for another day.
Ooh, we will talk about Alien next episodes. Yes, we are. Okay, that's it for today. How did Ulysses escape the think tank? He must be either a good navigator or Godspeed 200. Okay, that's it for today. Then we watch 40 episodes of the Storyteller. I will stop the stream right here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next stream. Bye bye. Oh, and join the goddamn Discord if you like, if you guys interested. That place is empty as shit. Okay, no pressure. If you guys interested, you guys can join in my Discord. The link is in my descriptions. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next stream. Bye bye.